Hello and welcome to the D6Damage Q&A. I'm here with the rest of the guys. I'm D6. Guys, why don't you introduce yourselves?
D10 here.
D8.
And D12.
And we're here to answer your questions.
Some of them. A select few.
We have
Feel your praise. Praise us more.
Our first question comes from DG Havoc 907. How would you go about dealing with the problem of wanting to play a cavalier/samurai without having to take an archetype to replace the mount? Most campaigns do involve going underground into some dangerous areas into some dungeons where horses do not do well.
Well, you could be small category. That's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
but that only goes for so long.
No, that works
goes the whole
perfectly.
game.
Yeah.
No, the small category mount will go into large category.
No, it won't.
We had this happen.
It does grow.
It can grow.
It can. I don't know
it's
if I would.
It's not a guarantee though.
Yeah.
Because it
I
actually
think you
says
could-
depending on the creature you choose.
Yeah. I think there's some wiggle room there.
Yeah.
Especially since I think it's kind of dumb for like a standard cavalier with a horse to suddenly have a huge category horse.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why
but
would
yeah.
you have a huge category horse?
That's
Like,
a little
that doesn't
weird.
make sense. So it makes sense if you're going with something that'll be more fun when it's bigger, like an elephant. But it doesn't make sense if you're going with like a dog. Why? There's no reason for it.
Yeah, but then we also get into the trouble of he's small category. How does he have reach?
Well, that's by the rules of the game.
Yeah, you just choose things with reach, and that's how that works.
I also think it's important to know about the cavalier that without your horse, it's not like you're going to instantly die. You're suboptimal, yes, but you can still do things.
Now, here's another fun fact about that particular race combination. You don't always have to mount it. Yes, you lose that aspect of it, but you don't always have to mount it.
I would like to say that we here at D6Damage do not condone mounting horses in any way, shape, or form, or any other animal.
Get your mind out of the gutter, D8.
No, he's always there.
Somebody's going to think it. I gotta say that we do not condone it in any way.
Bestiality is a thing, you know. And there are
It's a
certain
thing,
people
and we
that
do
get down
not
that
condone
way.
it.
I don't condone damn it.
Can we please move on?
No.
All right, so D10, next question, please.
All right, comes from Samuel Paget. I'm sorry. How could you make a counterfeit mage rogue archetype convincingly magical beyond 6th level? Could sneak attack damage be applied to touch spells?
So to answer the only question I see in there, because I'm ignoring the first line of text entirely. Yes, you can apply sneak attack to touch spells as long as it has an attack roll.
That's kind of what made Arcane Trickster so fun.
Alright, as for the counterfeit mage, it's a cool archetype. I really like it. It depends on whether you want it convincing to be RP-wise or if you want it to be mechanic-wise. We were looking at it and just couldn't find a way for you to realistically get more magical or like even you couldn't even go into Arcane Trickster unless you had the ability to cast 2nd level spells. So if you wanted to be able to get more magic in it, you'd have to actually put levels in spellcasting.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to do it RP-wise or you don't care quite so much about the mechanics of it, magic items can give you a lot of abilities that will make it look like you're magical. And my personal favorite, smoke pellets.
And make sure you max sleight of hand because you'll need that to make sure
Yep.
you're convincingly convincing.
But no stage magician is complete without a huge amount of smoke pellets.
Oh, yep. Smoke pellets are
Don't
the way to
forget
go.
bluff.
And smoke sticks.
Yep, all of those good little items, alchemical items and magic items, I think is what you need to look at.
Yeah.
Also, there are spell-like abilities from races. Certain races do have fairly robust spell-like abilities, and the possibility of getting more, like the gnome. The gnome has a number of inherent spell-like abilities. That's not necessarily what you're wanting, because those are going to be low level, but it's a possibility.
Yeah.
D8, next question.
Alright, this is from Lori 7x3, or 7x3, whichever way she wants it. When will you finally do Starfinder videos?
When we get the rule books. Personally, I haven't tried looking for them yet.
The only reason I haven't brought it up is primarily because we are primarily a fantasy style, and no one has expressed an actual deep interest for it. I mean, you guys, I think this is what, the second or third question that actually brings it up. or is
What?
this the only one
This is the only one on the sheet.
on this sheet though?
Yeah. Well, we have gotten questions about Starfinder in the past, and having looked briefly at the system, it's not a bad system. It's interesting. It seems like you have a lot of possibilities. They have new races and everything. It all kind of comes down to, when we get to doing a campaign in a sci-fi setting, we'll probably do a Starfinder stuff.
Honestly, as a player, I just feel like I'm just going to treat it as counterfeit Star Wars, and I don't feel like that's right either, and kind of discourages me into playing it.
It pushed it to your forefront.
I would like it more than Star Wars.
Well, you're not a Star Wars fan.
Well, I'm not like an enemy of Star Wars. Internet, please. I just want to make that clear. But I do think the real power behind something like Starfinder is you do not have a preconceived notion of how the universe works. And in Star Wars, when we played a little bit of Edge of the Empire, there were some things I didn't like because I wanted to be more creative with it, but there were strictures that were placed by the creators of the universe.
You wanted to play a suicidal Volter droid.
No, it wasn't suicidal.
It was completely suicidal.
It was depressed.
It was depressed. It wasn't
Because
suicidal.
he couldn't go in buildings.
That actually wasn't what I was talking about, though. I was what I didn't like about it is I liked the idea of Trandoshans, but I wanted something a little bit different than Trandoshans, and there really wasn't a way for you to make or easily use a race and have it be different than just the norm. And so I didn't like that. And I think with Starfinder, in any setting that doesn't have any preconceived notions, you can mess with any content you want to make it how you want it. My guess is that we personally don't have a whole lot of interest as a group in playing sci-fi, but we may end up picking up the book and looking at it just because you guys are so interested in hearing what we think about it.
Not to mention, it'll be one hell of a campaign to DM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, D12, next question.
All right. Senor Kevin Steiner. How would you handle a necromancer who wants to revive undead or commit acts of lesser evil and is in a party with a paladin? Well, there's your first problem, but let's continue. Second part of this is, how would you handle it as a player? How as a DM? I guess to start this off, you have one problem, and that's your necromancer's in a party with a paladin.
I would actually argue there's a different problem.
I was about to
say,
paladins can be malleable. They aren't just...
Oh, no. Actually, in the paladin rules, it literally states that he pretty much, as long as he's doing anything involving the undead, the paladin and him are just not going to be able to work together.
The Sarenrae paladin will let things slide.
The Sarenrae paladin will only let things slide if you choose to RP that way, but by according to the atonement
as
and
long as
paladin's
there's a greater
rules,
evil, you can work with the guy.
Yeah, you can work for him for a very short amount of time, but as soon as he mentions undead, the paladin has to stop the undead.
I was just going to ask what edition you want to play. Because if you're playing 5th edition, you got a lot more room to work with because you're not alignment locked. If you're playing Pathfinder, it's going to be much more difficult. One of the ways we handled, a group that I played with, handled a paladin being in a party of a bunch of chaotic neutral people who had a tendency to murder people, was we had that paladin have a very low wisdom score. And we kind of just... He was a little bit of an idiot. We would just tell him, like, my weapon discharged, accidental weapon discharge. Oops, shot that guy in the knee, didn't mean to. It's not torture, I swear. And he was like, okay.
As one of the people that's actually played Paladin, there's usually nothing more that takes me out of the game as the rest of the players playing hide you from the Paladin, hide you from the Paladin.
So, as a rule or as a thing, when it comes to the necromancer paladin, love-hate relationship, that one's unfortunately going to always be there no matter the edition. The difference is how strong it will be there.
Well, there is, especially in 5th edition, some room to maneuver because I'm actually currently in our Curse of Strahd game playing a necromancer, and there is a paladin in the party, and 5th edition gives you, as a necromancer, a lot more ability to do things other than just raise dead. You have a lot of things, like you have Chill Touch does extra effects against undead. You can actually be a necromancer that's kind of like an anti-undead necromancer, and that's kind of a cool idea to go with. As
So-
as a DM, I would say don't put a necromancer in a party with a paladin.
And as a DM that made this mistake, do not give your necromancer a coffin full of onyx.
There's
Okay.
nothing wrong with the coffin full of onyx, man. Necromancers love that undead power.
Okay, so now, as a DM, this is kind of my standpoint. You're there to facilitate your players. If your player has basically come to you and said, man, I want to play a necromancer, and I want to be all about that army of the undead. I want to be, like, seriously stereotypical with this. And you've looked at your campaign. You've sat down and says, this is what I want to accomplish, and these are kind of the rules of the world. And you say, okay, it's something that I can allow to happen. You just got to let it happen, and the players are going to do what the players are going to do.
I agree. I think once it's in motion, you shouldn't attempt to stop it. I mean, that is part of the party dynamic, is for them to figure out how they're going to make it work.
Yeah, and it's going to be more so on the necromancer to figure that out than the paladin, because literally his class, unless he wants to forfeit however many levels he put in paladin, depending on your version of the game, his class dictates that he has to do certain things when faced with evil. And unfortunately, the necromancer is the only one that has the wiggle room going, I could summon undead, or I could just use the other necromantic abilities that are available to me. Dealer's choice, though.
All right, this next question comes from John Daughtry. Would you recommend that new GMs use official modules for their first campaign? I definitely would. I think that when you're first starting out as a DM, it's a big job. You have a lot of things you have to consider. And writing and statting things out and figuring out just what the players are going to do, that's all things that are, at least you have direction on from a module. You know, and you don't need to come up with it on the fly, because if you've... This is something that any seasoned DM will tell you that we do, is we come up with an idea and we think it's awesome. And it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to have this guy. And he's going to be like all shady, and the players aren't going to know if they're going to trust him. And he's going to like feed them breadcrumbs of information. And they're going to either completely ignore him or shoot him in the face because he looks shady, and you're not going to know what to do. So... that's the kind of... you learn how to handle that with experience. But like, oh, well, there are other ways it could have happened. Maybe he had a contact. Maybe he had a cousin. Maybe he had a best friend. Maybe he just had a letter explaining it in his boot. But that's the kind of thing that you learn with experience, and coming up with it on the fly is more difficult than you think.
I don't know what he's talking about.
I thoroughly enjoy most of the situations that this particular scenario is coming across, but I only have... my thoughts on it are simple. You can either go with the module, which literally lays out the groundwork for you, so all you're really doing is control or basically being ringmaster to your players, going, okay, you guys, now this is what's going on. You can do and insert, blank here, or you can make yourself a small little one-shot, something that you've seen online or heard something about, or something that just sounded like a really cool idea, like a very small one-shot dungeon, No more than 4 or 5 rooms, a couple of puzzles, a couple of monsters, just to get yourself wet. Get your RP wet, get your skill usage, and many other aspects of the skills that may or may not have been thought of, because players will surprise you, always. Or just get your combat wet and figure out, from the DM's perspective, how you like doing things. And, a one-shot is just as good, if not better, than doing a module. The difference is depending on the version and module you're in, I'll speak from Pathfinder to start with, they can be brutal to your players and for an inexperienced DM. You can kill your players by accident and be like, shit.
Yeah, but then there are modules that I found just completely underpowered, like the Cobalt Key trilogy that I ran for you guys was not up to snuff.
Yeah, well, that's also depending on the creatures that are involved, but it comes down to that choice of one or the other.
I have mixed feelings on it, because I've run 2 different Paizo modules at this point. I've run Rune Lords and I've run Giant Slayer. And at times, they're a huge help, because I am not the best of DMs when it comes to making things up. This is why I choose to run modules. And other times, they're incredibly frustrating, because a lot of times you'll have players that want information that is just not given to you in the module. And so you do have to think on your feet, but you weren't. It's even less because you didn't make the world,
or
so
worse,
you
you're
had less
given
to know.
information that the players can never know.
Yeah, I would say that it is best to start with some kind of groundwork. I would argue that it depends on the DM and how fast they can come up with things and how into making the encounters they are. Because I don't like making encounters, that's why I run modules. I would say that one good way to do it is to run a couple of the adventure, the Pathfinder Chronicle little one-shot missions and string them together, and then eventually go off of that and make your own thing.
Yeah.
And that way you get some continuation because they're all back-to-back adventures that have some connecting ties, but you're not locked in the way you are with a campaign, with a module campaign.
Yeah.
All right, this next question is basically for me from Samuel Thurman.
No, this one's totally for me.
All right, so where do you get the images and music for your videos? Well, I get them from YouTube and Google Image. There are a lot of Google Image can be a dangerous tool because it can surprise you. I think it's
another really good one. If you're looking for some images out there, is Pinterest. Just you can take,
Pinterest has a lot of stuff because it's got
usually
the search
stay
bar.
with the within your theme.
Yeah, because you can just scroll down and find things that you're kind of looking for,
and then it also leads you to other things that you may not have known you were looking for.
YouTube also has free music that you can do if you just run a search for YouTube free music that you can add like as background stuff for your videos. I believe the opening to the video is a Gregorian chant. I just really kind of like that one thematically. I think it sounds cool. And sometimes I drew the D6 logo myself, which is why it looks worse than everything else.
I wouldn't say worse. It's original and has character and attitude.
It's fridge-worthy.
Yes.
All right.
Cringe-worthy, right? That is the word you said.
All right, D10, next question.
All right. Are you ever going to do Dungeons and Dragons 5e? We are.
Wait.
Who is that from?
Leiden Theory? Or Iden Theory? I don't know how to pronounce that.
I would go with Leiden Theory.
I would too.
And just assume he misspelled it because that was the easiest way of getting it. Because YouTube is YouTube.
But yeah, we're playing Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition right now. These guys are playing a game of Strahd, which I'm not part of due to scheduling.
Yeah, so, but if you're talking about, like, build videos, I also, now that I've had a chance to really kind of dig into the 5e system, it's not as mechanically rich as Pathfinder, but there are definitely characters in there that I think require enough finagling that, it is worth talking about. Also, it's good to kind of look at things like the feats and other aspects of characters to talk about things like best practices and things that can be really good additions because the feats, it's a big choice for you in 5e. So do I really want this thing is a major question that you're going to need to ask yourself. It's not like you can say, oh, well, if the feat doesn't really do a lot for me, not a big deal. I'll get one like next level because in 5e, you marry the feat. You get down on one knee and you put a ring on it.
I'm going to have to agree, unfortunately. In 5e, builds are not really difficult. It's more along the lines of how creative are you, and if you have an idea and want help flushing it out, they're definitely, we could help you with that, or others could help you with that. But if you're just looking for generic, hey, I want to build an archer, well, almost every class can be an archer.
They actually give you that in the book. It's like, this is how you build... this is how you roll up a ranger really quickly.
Yeah.
I would say that I've grown to love 5th edition more than Pathfinder in a lot of ways. And I would say that definitely Pathfinder makes better content for videos, especially on advice, because there is so much mechanics to it. 5th edition is much more about, when you're making a character, it's not really about your choices so much as it's about how you want to RP a character. It's more about building your RP rather than building your mechanics, because your mechanics are not as important.
It's kind of more about story choices than actual mechanic choices.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you're locked into your mechanic choices, but your story choices, that's where you got the real creative juices flowing.
So I would say that 5th edition requires less video from us, simply because there's less mechanics to really worry about. There's less content to really dive into and try to find something.
Ha!
All right, so D8.
What?
Next question.
Okay. By Twisted Sage 42. I'm running Temple of Elemental Evil for my home group. Have you ever run that before? And if so, do you have any hints? And he has a second question here. In D&D, what do you use for item creation, both magical and mundane / alchemical items? Do you use the rules as written, or do you homebrew it?
So when it comes to the Temple of Elemental Evil, I am a fan of that particular module. I think it's really cool. I think it's one of the better legacy modules that's been put out by Wizards.
I've only played a really old computer game of it, and I want to play it on the table.
Yeah, I like the version that you get with Neverwinter, the MMORPG. I think that's a good presentation. You know, it's kind of an introduction for it. D12, what do you think?
Neverwinter scares me when it comes to things that they do in that, but that is a completely off-topic subject right there.
Yeah, let's talk to the Temple of Elemental Evil.
Yeah, back to the Temple of Elemental Evil. In and of itself, there is... think about hints for that one. Always read a chapter ahead on that one, because literally there are things that you're going to realize that you may or may not want to give your party as far as information or hints or clues, and you're going to be like, oh, that was a bad idea if you read a chapter ahead, or it was a great idea if you read a chapter ahead and realize may or may not have found something because you didn't give them that information. As to your second question, unless somebody else wants to speak further into the first.
I think we're done with it.
All right, then. As to your second question about creating magic items and mundane items, both alchemic?
Yeah.
Chemical?
Are you only really worried about the alchemical items, or are you worried about
All mundane.
all of them? Because if you're thinking about all of them, I use a combination of time spent and craft skill, which basically means that I'm using the craft skill more often than not. And then if it comes to magical, I use one of two things. It's you're either using magic to create the item, in which case you're investing gold, which means I make you quote-unquote buy supplies, or you're doing it the easy way, which is you literally are using magic to manifest this item.
I think he means more as a game runner than as a player.
Yeah.
We can look at it both ways.
I think...
I was doing it from the in-game perspective.
I think from when it comes to item creation, the item creation rules are really good, but they're a little heavy to read and understand. In a lot of ways, I think as a DM, you should be more willing to work with your players, and if the item creation feats or item creation features are just not going to work, like you don't have 8 hours of rest or 8 hour downtimes, you don't have a week where you can just make stuff, well then I think you need to work with them to try to give them a substitute. I would argue that while the rules as written are good to use, if they do not work, you should not be afraid to homebrew it. Because I think it is more important to give the experience to your players than it is to stick to the ruling.
Yeah, on this one in particular, it's far easier to make a house rule, add it to the thing that you're using as a supplement, basically. Okay, you have time to do this, so you can attempt at this level, or just increase the DC and make it shorter. Or do something along those lines where you have several options for yourself. And then once you've made the decision, playtest it. If you like how it worked, playtest it one more time. If it worked again just as well, try it with your party. If it doesn't work there, then you know that you missed something. Go back, try again. You can always change and rewrite and retcon, but it's better to, go in with, as much information. Okay, I want my party may build this. How do I want to do this? Well, do I want them to go and buy pound of iron and a nice sized log of wood, and now they can make an axe, using craft? Or do I want them to manifest these items magically, because magic is king in most of these fantasies.
Mm-hmm.
All right, D12, next question.
Yeah, baby. This one's from Amityville because that's how I'm choosing to pronounce your name.
Why not?
Gunslinger Summoner build.
Why?
Why?
Now, I think I might have an idea of where you're going with this. Unfortunately, with just 3 words, I'm looking at this going, okay, Gunslinger. Yeah, alright class. Can be fun, can be not. Depends on your DM and the scenarios you get into.
And
Summoner
and
class.
your fellow players, I feel.
Little bit on the weak side. Combining the two, you're not really going to synergize too well, so...
Unless you're using the one of the mysterious stranger that lets you use charisma instead of wisdom.
Yeah, that's the archetype to go with. For
I
the
don't.
gunslinger
Yeah, I
portion.
don't see. I think you're spending too many. You're diving into too many different ability pools.
You're going to be spread out.
I just don't see what you. I just don't see what you get.
Like what? Do you want the Eidolon to pin the guy so you can shoot him in the head?
I guess I could see summoning a bunch of monsters so they can't get to you, but those monsters go down so easily that I don't really think you get anything from it. I think that you can do it. I think that you might even have fun doing it. I think that I don't see a reason to do it.
Yeah, we just don't see a path.
So what I would do, and this is a very much... It comes off as a little bit silly, and there's a lot of if the DM will let me, is probably lean more on the gunslinger and basically use the Eidolon essentially as a mount, because I'm picturing this ghost cowboy riding a skeleton horse, and eventually it gets wings so you can just fly around and shoot guys.
I take everything back. You know why? Because I want to do the Eidolon that's the clockwork golem people, and I want them to have a big gun. And in that regard, I think that would be really cool.
It wouldn't work as well as one would hope.
I know, but it would be really cool.
No,
I think if you did like a synthesis summoner, you got to go in the suit of armor and shoot the big gun. That would be pretty cool.
No one allows synthesis summoners anymore.
Well,
that is taboo.
I'm not saying
that is a subject we don't even speak on.
Fine, whatever.
But RP wise, Summoner Gunslinger would be entertaining to see happen. Combat wise, it wouldn't be as beneficial or as fluid as one would hope, and overall your build is going to suffer in certain areas. It's up to you to determine where it's going to suffer.
Our next question is from Alejandro Bennett. I've been trying to make a rogue/summoner multi-class work, with the main idea being using the Eidolon to get yourself into sneak attack range. The races I feel would have the best result would be either human or half-elf, although I'm open to other ideas. My question would be, how many levels should I take into each class, and what feats might make this build playable? Before you ask, yes, I do know that the summoner is not optimal when multiclassing. I mostly want to do it for flavor, but I want some quick guidance on how not to be completely useless to the party. Thank you for the advice.
Alright, so to start this off...
Yeah, this needs some research.
We're going to crack open some PDFs and books.
Right here.
But here's your first thing. Your rogue summoner can work. Not only do I know this from the aspect of the summoner, because I went primarily summoner and then dropped wizard levels, and realized I could have easily dropped rogue levels and turned my ranged attacks, because I was basically a summoner archer with an archer Eidolon. I could have turned my ranged attacks into ranged sneaks and just watching as people just died.
That was surprisingly awesome.
And that way, that gives
surprisingly
the rogue...
annoying.
That gives the rogue aspect really nice. And it also makes your rogue, your rogue summoner build can be really nasty, especially since you did mention half elf, and you can either go half or full elf. Get the racial.
So long as we're talking about the race, I really think half elf is the way to go with this one, because you get the 2 favored class bonuses.
That's a good idea. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I would recommend halfling for this as well.
Yeah, halfling could definitely
see
do a
that.
good
I
job.
could see that.
But as the half-elf, your favorite class bonus for the summoner is you add plus 1/4 to the Eidolon's evolution pool, so every 4 levels, that's an extra evolution point.
Yeah, which can really, especially if you're using Unchained, can really make the difference, because in Unchained, they hit you where it hurt when it came to your points.
Honestly, I just thought of something in the Question: he's using the Eidolon to get into sneak attack range. Is there like a spell where you can castle yourself into?
Yes, I believe there is.
You can castle at later levels.
One way I think is just a great use for the Eidolon for a rogue is to have it flank.
Yep, either flank or hell, if it can fly, have it drop you into combat in right in the perfect position.
To learn more about that build, go to the D6 Damage Summoner flanking build.
I would say that. Thank you for saying that you clearly understand that this is not going to be an optimal character. And don't take me wrong, one of my favorite characters I've ever played was the most suboptimal character I've ever played. It was completely pointless. But what I like about your idea here is that you are doing it for flavor, and in that way you have a lot more room to negotiate with. I think you should don't discount your party members as being able to also give you sneak attack. I think you can not only take it for flavor, but still also get use out of your party members. I think that it depends on whether you want to have your Eidolon do something. I think you should take an Eidolon that's hard to kill. I think you should take more levels in Rogue than Summoner. I think you should... I think a Halfling is a good idea because I think you should put lots of things into Acrobatics and you should just tumble right past and let the big old Eidolon take their main view.
Though, like most multi-classes, I feel like this will only start working around 10th to mid-level.
This could work as early as 7.
Like I said, mid-level.
But I don't see it working before 7.
I think you're in for a rough time.
Getting to 7.
I think, especially since if you want it for RP, you probably want Summoner early. You might want to take a couple levels in Summoner off the bat if you wanted to do that, to try to make the Eidolon useful before going into Rogue. I think there's certainly a lot of room to do a melee Summoner. So I think you're probably better off going Summoner first and then into Rogue.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with him on that one. The Summoner class, unfortunately, is the more fragile and more... has the most things that can happen that can really offset what you're trying to do, and as such, taking it early means that you won't have as many of the detriments that you would if you tried stacking it later, because your summon would just instant croak on you to enemies and so on and so forth. Your combats would just be so much more difficult, whether as you're starting with it, you get used to its bread and butter and techniques right away.
Another thing to remember is that as the summoner, you do have the ability to use Summon Monster, and that can be really nasty, especially if you get enough levels to be able to summon more than one thing. And then you can slap 2 spider or 2 elementals right next to the dude and have flanking from more than one direction, in which case you're giving your party a lot more benefit, because you're not just giving yourself flanking, but with multiple creatures out, you can actually give your entire party flanking. That being said, I do not recommend the Brood Summoner. And this is only because if you have limited levels, you do not want to have a bunch of Eidolons that are no good to you.
You don't want a bunch of things that are going to run up and die.
Oh, what's that? AC 10, 1 hit point apiece?
Yeah, well, I mean...
a lot of crap is a lot of crap.
I mean, even the summon monsters, those will only ever be used for distraction for maybe a turn or two. That's why you need to be able to summon more than one. And the flanking. You're better off having one summon or one Eidolon that's hard to kill
than you are with
3 or 4 of them that aren't.
Oh no, the Holy Cat would turned out to be a lot more useful than its Eidolon in that one situation.
Oh, that's because he couldn't actually summon it when he did.
All right, D10, next question.
This comes from PJ Gary. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced. Which Pathfinder class do each of you dislike/refuse to play the most, and why?
Let's go around the circle here, starting with D6.
Yeah,
all right, so
D6 on this one.
I am not a fan of the Bard. I've tried playing Bard. I like the idea. Unfortunately, it just doesn't give me enough of what I want at the table. It's got the jack of all trades problem, where I'm a little of this, I'm a little of that. I don't stand out in any particular way, and I've found that I just kind of don't like playing support, which is a major role of the Bard. That's also why I'm not a huge fan of Cleric. Now, I'm aware that Cleric can be many different things. You can build Clerics into a lot of different things, and I'm not necessarily opposed to Clerics, but I think the core concept of the Cleric, kind of not my thing. D10?
Bards I had trouble with, but I can see where they can be fun. But yeah, in Pathfinder I'll probably never play one ever again. Same goes for the Witch. And personally I just don't see myself playing the Samurai. The features it gets just doesn't seem to be enough to not just go Fighter or even Cavalier. What? I don't... I'm literally thinking of this off the top of my head.
Just wait until you tell me you're done, that's all.
That's most I got.
Right. This was a tough one for me because I have extreme dislikes of most things.
He's incredibly opinionated.
I am. I don't generally like to play anything Eastern themed, but I can see their uses. I would I would certainly say the class I dislike and the class I refuse to play the most are different. I'd say the one I refuse to play the most is Cleric because I don't like supporting. I've tried it and I don't enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, I don't want to play the class. The Bard I actually had more fun with than I did with the Cleric because I felt the Bard you could do more all at once. You could have your inspiring courage going on while you're fighting. I felt you could actually... you couldn't do things as powerful as a Cleric could, but you could actually accomplish more for your whole party. You could affect everyone rather than just one person at a time, and I like that more. I'd say the class I dislike the most is probably the Gunslinger, mainly for a couple of reasons. One, I don't think, RP-wise, I don't think guns have a place in a fantasy world. And we've discussed that before, and that's just an opinion.
He took up a majority of the time on that video,
and that's just an opinion. As for I don't. The Gunslinger can be fun, and I would play him. I have a couple different ideas I would play with the Gunslinger. I don't really like the class. I don't like the things you get from it. I don't like the benefits you get from it, really. I think you can have a lot of fun with it, though, and in that regard, I would play it more than I would the Cleric. But I really do think it doesn't have a place.
Right, D12.
See, this one's a difficult one for me.
Yeah, you're kind of all around.
Because I will play the support, I will play the off tank, because there's no such thing as a tank when you come to JRPGs. and actual tabletop RPGs. And then I will just as easily play the healer
or the DPS.
Or the DPS. The classes, I'm going to give you a small section, and you might pick up the threads, but the Unchained Summoner, because in my opinion, the regular Summoner was just fine. It just needed a couple of tweaks, and unfortunately, they over-tweaked it when they went Unchained. And the Vigilante. Those two classes stand out to me as classes that I will probably dislike and or won't play. I was going to play Vigilante right up until I finished reading the section on it, and it literally pretty much says you're two characters in one body, and one of your characters is a combat character and your other character is a social character. The two paths can't cross, nobody can know your identity, or you lose your class. That one hurts.
Yeah, trust me, I was the DM for that campaign, and I was so disappointed.
Because the class itself has a plethora of nice abilities that it could use. But the problem that you run into is that you are playing two people, one body. And if you can't do that, you're in trouble. And if you can do it, you run into the problem of, can your DM and the world do it?
Mm.
And there's where you run into most of your problems. And then the Unchained Summoner, well, the Unchained Summoner just felt like it got hit with the Nerf bat, and then the Nerf hammer, and then the Nerf cinder block, and then the Nerf building, and then all of a sudden they said, oh, but we'll give you a little buff. But it's too late.
So, would you be willing to play the original Summoner?
I would play an original Summoner over an Unchained Summoner, but I would have to nerf it a little. Because like I said before, the original Summoner was just too strong. You're talking 3d6 of damage in natural attacks.
On level 1.
On level 1. That's just too much. Nothing outside of a monster does that, and unfortunately, because you're a summoner, you're running around with a monster at your side.
Honestly, this was kind of a tough one to sit through, considering two of the closest friends I have hate my two favorite classes.
It's because they're bad classes.
No, it's not because they're bad classes. It's because
I beg to differ. My cleric can take down your fucking not paladin any day.
All right,
That was just a rally.
D8. Next question.
Okay. This is from Donald93. And I hope there is not actually 92 other Donalds in the room with him. Question: how often do the rules of necromancy making undead servants spell types, so like animate dead and create undead and etc., rules for making and controlling undead come up at your table from your experience as a GM or a player? If you have been at the table with a necromancer with this type of necromancer style, did you enjoy the play style as player or GM?
As a GM, no.
That's only because he didn't know how to deal with armies, and he was new. You can't take that against him.
Well, I'll say this for creating undead. I enjoy it. I love it. I'd play a necromancer that creates undead anytime.
When it comes to that particular question, for me, I have probably the most experience when it comes to undead. I've played over 20 different necromancers across from basically from the first introduction of necromancer, which was 2.0 technically, or AD&D, till now, with the exception of Pathfinder 2. I played a necromancer in just about everything with the exception of 5e, and I'm working on trying to figure out how to do it.
You played a necromancer in 4th?
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
No, I played a necromancer and I played a rogue. Those are the two classes that I always play in every class I jump in, or in every system I jump into.
Now, as a DM, necromancers are scary. Just that's kind of the way it is.
Sometimes.
Because you're afraid that if this thing gets out of hand, you're just not going to have a good way to deal with it, other than sicking like a bunch of paladins on the necromancer to whittle away at that army. And by the time you've done that, you have effectively spoiled his fun. So I understand the intimidation factor, but it's one of the things that you learn to deal with as you gain experience, because undead are good for many things, but they're not they can't solve every problem for you.
No.
Honestly, as a GM, when I dealt with it, it wasn't so much the army and I couldn't deal with it. Well, it was also that, but it was also the fact that he had so many undead going at once, and for some reason, I guess I underpowered my enemies. He kind of made the rest of the party not need to be there to deal with the encounter.
The thing about undead from a GM's perspective, especially when it comes to the rules about controlling and such, is you have to realize that upon the creation in the spell, it literally says one of two things: they're either in control of it or they make it. If they make it and they're not in control of it, then they have to use another power to gain control of said undead. However, if they make it and have control of it, then you run into the problem of, okay, now to deal with undead versus somebody else. Well, then you run into the easy scenario is most undead are inherently weaker than the creature that they came from. However, that is not always true. And as a GM, you just kind of have to look at it and go, okay, if I let him have the ability to create undead, which means I'm giving him the materials, because the material component is costly for creating undead. In every aspect said, maybe one. And because of that, you have to literally decide, do I want that material to be available where they're at? If no, you don't have to think of a reason. You just say, oh no, they don't really get that in this area, so you can't, harness, harvest, or whatever, and make an undead army. However, if you've already made it available to the player, like they've already picked up the stuff, and they're literally about to make an undead army, or at least some undead, just figure out, okay, well then they find a human, or a halfling, or a dwarf skeleton, and then, oh yeah, this guy wasn't that powerful.
Well, I think the key is reasonable limitations. Like, if you make... it's onyx, right? Is the substance you need for the material
in Pathfinder, at least.
It's either obsidian or onyx.
Whatever it is, making it rare enough that the player has a hard time getting it, and needs to be protective of his undead. He can't just send, oh, wave after wave of skeletons will solve this problem.
That's a lie.
I feel like it should. I feel like it should also be said I've never actually played a necromancer myself outside of Diablo 2, and honestly, I'm not a controlled kind of player, and I never really liked that kind of play style. So maybe it's just not for me.
I'm going to agree with you on that one. It's definitely a playstyle meant for the more darker and evilly inclined, and I am a natural-born villain.
No, I just meant play style wise. I didn't even mean RP wise.
Yeah, I know. Your playstyle is to the light, and I am to the dark.
And yet we get along so well.
That's because my willingness to RP with you is so great.
Okay, Darth D12, what's our next question?
Yes, but of course, D6. Victor Hugo, you have more to your name than I'm willing to pronounce. How should I build a blade-bound magus? I'm not sure if you should, but let's say you do decide to go about doing this.
Build it like you would a regular magus.
Yeah, you really don't deviate much from the original.
I mean,
Well, there are
the
a
only
few differences that can trip you up.
The only big differences are you have less arcane points and less arcane pool powers. But the mediator for that is you have a talking unbreakable sword that can cast spells for you and later on can teleport into your hand as long as you're on the same plane of existence.
My first thing to say would be talk to your DM as to who's in control of the sword.
Yes.
I would like to know if I were in that group or if I were considering playing a blade-bound magus, if I get to RP the sword or if the Dungeon Master gets to RP the sword. If the Dungeon Master is RPing the sword, I want to be very, very clear on what I want the personality or what I want out of the sword to be. I've played a character with something similar to blade-bound magus, and I found that when I gave control over to the DM, what he was doing with it was not what I felt the character of the sword should do. And so I think an important thing to do is to know and talk with your GM on exactly what you want the sword to accomplish.
Yeah,
But that ruling is for any intelligent item, period.
Yeah.
Because once you've
you've given control over to the DM, that's it. You have you'll never get it back.
The reason
Nor
I
should
feel
you.
feel like I know so much is because I built a blade-bound magus. I'm actually gonna be playing the next upcoming campaign, and yeah, it better not be another Malleus Maleficarum situation, Toby.
Nah, don't worry about it. It'll be fine.
Well, that was only because you made the mistake of not checking with the DM as soon as it became
I
intelligent.
didn't know it was intelligent!
I said as soon as it became intelligent.
All right, so this is what I'm going to say for the Blade-Bound. How I would do one is I'm the only one who can hear the sword. So I like the idea of this possibly insane magical swordsman who talks to his sword, and everyone thinks he's nuts.
Yeah, but then
No,
that kind of limits RP.
I
don't
like the
think it
idea
does.
of the sword being able to choose whether it wants to speak to others or to its master,
I'd like that one.
but the end result is, do you have control or does your DM? Because if your DM has control, it makes more sense that the sword could talk to only the player.
Yeah.
But if you have control, then the sword can just as easily be like talking shit or not talking. Actually, I recommend the sword never talk shit because a magic user will find a place to put it.
I had the privilege to play with someone who's doing a blade-bound Kensai build, and I can tell you at level 12, it is possibly one of the most overpowered builds ever created in a Dungeons & Dragons game. He was reliably doing over 100 damage with every strike, and it was pretty nasty. I would say that, yes, build it like you would a normal magus, but the beauty with the blade-bound is you can mix it with other archetypes, so do not limit yourself.
Yeah.
Really look at the options you have available to you.
That being said, the Kansai is probably the only one actually worth a damn.
All right, the next question comes from Moonstar Shine. Feelings on Pathfinder Hero deck and Deck of Illusions. Pathfinder Witch Cardomancer, is that how you say it?
Yes.
Yep.
Cardomancer build. Feelings on third-party publishers of Pathfinder, especially Silver Games. All right, so I think the Hero deck is pretty neat. I think it's a great thematic item.
Wish I could find it.
No, he means the actual item.
Oh,
The
okay.
actual in-game item. But they do have, like, all of the different suits, and you can look those up and kind of what they represent. I like the way that it represents the different abilities of a character. That's like the strength, the dexterity, the
I thought of doing a character with that kind of deal. I really like the idea behind it. I'm too lazy to actually use it, I think, so I don't generally deal with the Hero deck or the Deck of Illusions. I know that the Deck of Illusions is considered by many a must-have in any D&D campaign, and I would agree that it's definitely a classic item. And those two kinds of, especially the Deck of Illusions, is something that you can give a party and just see what happens.
Is it like a less powerful deck of many things? Or?
No,
it creates an illusion of things. That's one of the fun random items that, as a DM, you don't need to be afraid of because it's not going to significantly hurt you or your game in some way.
That is not true.
Well,
however, it can't outright hurt you if you plan appropriately. The Deck of Illusions has a couple illusions in there that can straight up demoralize a situation and make it sway heavily in the party's favor, even if you had it planned to the T on how you were going to force your party to go into that offshoot tunnel. All of a sudden they use a red dragon and chase whatever monster you had out of its area, and now they're in the throne room of a place they weren't supposed to be because
sounds like this happened.
Red dragon.
Sounds like this happened before.
Oh, I've used the Deck of Illusions. It's a plaything. It's a constant plaything of mine. Just like the Deck of Many Things. The scariest magic item that should be in every game.
I think the Deck of Illusions is a fun thing to have in the game because it can create circumstances that you had no way of preparing for, and you can really see what fun, stupid shit can happen from it.
Oh, it totally... Between the Deck of Illusion... Actually, mostly the Deck of Illusions. Now, when you go to the Hero deck, I have a character right now who's currently working with his Hero deck, about to actually start being able to use the Hero aspect of the Hero deck. But right now he's using it as the card Magus and using it as a D6 darts because, you know, hitting people for a D6 at range and touch is just fun.
Speaking of the Gambit, I mean the Cardomancer.
That's not the right... That's a different archetype.
Yeah. No, it is very... I think if you want to play Gambit, as many fans of X-Men do, I think it's not a bad way to get there.
I think it's better to go with the Magus archetype, though.
Yeah.
Between the two, I would choose the Magus over the Witch's Cardomancer, only because the Witch's gives you only so many little tidbit abilities that kind of help, where the Magus pretty much goes... yeah, you want that to be a shocking grasp. Alright, range, shocking grasp. Got it. Touch. Whoosh. 30 feet. You just gave yourself a range 30 foot shocking grasp.
As
at
far
level
as,
2.
As far as third-party publishers go, I generally would recommend staying away from them. That does not mean, however, that they can't be useful. One of the great things about them is if you're looking for something that doesn't exist in the main game, it is always a good idea just to take a look at to see what other people have made. Some of them will, of course, not be balanced. Some of it is going to be completely unfair or completely stupid, and then don't use that kind of stuff. But sometimes you can find some hidden gems there that you can consult with whoever's GMing the game, and you can find things that are a lot of fun.
Yeah,
as far as Silver Games goes, I don't know why you want to play as My Little Pony in the middle of Pathfinder, so no, I don't see why I would ever allow that.
Honestly...
That's a bronies only campaign.
You get your group together, and if everyone agrees to something, you know, you can deal with the consequences and or benefits of doing it either way. It really will come down to, was it balanced? I mean, when you sit down and you make a party of My Little Ponies, that's what I'm getting at from you guys.
That's what I saw when I looked it up really quick. If I'm wrong, then I apologize.
But you're going to run into the scenario where somebody's going to make something that just doesn't quite blend well, and how you deal with it will determine whether or not it's a good idea. My thoughts on most third-party stuff is I'd rather homebrew than third-party it.
Yes, I'd agree. I would look at it for inspiration only.
Yeah, the Blood Magus, anybody?
I look at it and I just kind of, what are you talking about? The Bloat Magus is just a fine class, and I think it is an actual class.
Also,
what are you talking about?
No, I just thought your blood pool was insanely broken throughout that campaign.
Yeah, it's not third party.
Yeah, no, that was
that's homebrew.
That was homebrew.
Yeah, I was
like
as
I said,
a
some
counter
things
argument to homebrew.
No, some things
That
will
has
always
nothing
be
to do with the
unbalanced.
conversation we're having.
it's literally comes down to you have to balance it yourself. Once you figure out it's too strong, how do you bring it back?
All right. Anyway, next question. D10.
Okay.
Josh.
Okay, thank you.
Josh, my
For
bro.
some reason, I thought we were on the next page. Hey, it's me again. Only questions are: would you pay a GM to help you playtest stuff and you've made, even if there are even if you have a lot? I mean, 6 or 7 races in a class. In other words, would you pay a GM to help you playtest?
If that's the question, the answer to that is I have enough GMs and enough acknowledgement, not to mention enough players, that I can literally go, hey, I'm throwing together a one-shot, here's your races, here's your classes. Pick, choose, play, we'll test this out the good old-fashioned way with my actual party.
Let's go, buddies.
Yeah.
I'd agree with that. I think a lot of times you can simply find someone you don't need to pay. Most people are willing to at least try it if you're trying it once off to play test. I think you're a little ambitious if you're going to play test that many things at once.
Yeah.
Not to say that it's not a good idea. I wouldn't know. I don't play test things. I would say that no, I wouldn't pay someone beyond the money needed to run the game. For example, if you're playing a module, I think everyone should chip in to get the next book or something like that. As far as playtesting goes, no, I don't see any reason that you need to pay someone.
All right. Well, when it comes to playtesting, this is kind of my stance on it. Why do you want to playtest it? Is it just for your own benefit? Is this something you're planning on sharing with the community? Is this something you're planning on publishing someday?
Isn't this the same guy that was talking about doing homebrew trades for other races for his setting?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
So that's probably what he wants to playtest for.
If he's building it for his group, though, then that makes more sense to do it with his
So
group.
I
anyway,
agree. If you're not, I think what D6 is getting at here is that if you're not going to publish it, then you generally don't need to pay someone for it.
yeah. But if you are planning on publishing it, then I would say that what you're going to want to do is test one thing at a time, because that's really how you're going to. Like, if you're testing 6 different things at once and something weird happens, it's going to be really hard for you to figure out, okay, what do I need to fix?
Yeah. And in that aspect, now, when it comes to the unasked question of do you pay a GM for anything? Yes. You can easily pay a GM for a group if you can't find one, if you can't locate one, and if it's just a difficulty.
Like, personally, I was thinking of hiring a GM just to see how we all work as a singular party, because unfortunately we only have the 4 of us sometimes.
And then...
Well, you die, I kill the thing, and these two succeed at whatever stupid thing they're doing.
I do not die every campaign, and you're a fucking liar, and you died first.
Did not die.
You died in Babylon.
Okay, well, that character did die a couple times.
Also, I don't know if you really parried that Vorpal Blade.
I
You
did.
did not
I
parry.
did
not
parry. You can.
Rules as written, you didn't parry a Vorpal
Rules
Blade.
as written, you did parry a Vorpal Blade.
But I'm a nice DM, so he lives.
All right, D8, next question.
Kenneth Baptiste.
Yeah, Kenneth Baptiste. I like your name. I would like to play a demigod in a long-term campaign.
Wouldn't we all?
Campaign, I assume you mean. The god I am looking to give them is Ravana. And why is it that some DM will not let you play monster races in-game?
Why do I feel
I
like
don't know.
If the player took the time to look it up, they should be able to play it. I would actually like to say that while I would enjoy playing monster races, I do not condone it.
D6,
I actually think...
D6, I suddenly feel attacked. You?
You know?
I think, regardless of how I said that, and as much as I would like to play monster races, there's a lot of baggage that goes along with that, and you shouldn't just be able to do it if you look it up. I think if you can offer a good enough argument, if you can convince your DM to do it, then that's fine. If you can't convince them, then they're not going to let you do it, and I think they have every right to do so.
So, one of the questions that the DM needs to say to himself is, what kind of world am I making? Am I making a world where, this is like The Witcher, and everyone's going to freak out if a monster shows up and immediately come at it with, torches and pitchforks? Or am I playing in a Masters of the Universe world where, hey man, Sounds cool. We totally need a sentient Umber Hulk.
Oh wait,
that's something we need.
Oh wait, we have talking dogs. We have talking dogs.
I would also like to say I misread that. It says DM God or Dime God. That might be something different.
And
Demigod's a bit much. Play 4th edition.
Okay, seriously, if you play 4th edition, you are a demigod.
Well, yeah, no, it's
I was
literally
just going to
not
say play level 20. Play a level 20 campaign for a while.
a mythic, yeah.
Yeah, go mythic. No. As far as creating or playing a demigod in general, it doesn't matter the god. I'm not going to lie to you. It won't matter the god. Your DM has two options. Do I want you to have an ever-growing pool of power? Because basically you're essentially telling your DM, I want to be a mythic character with regular player levels. Or do you want to... or does your DM just not want to deal with that? And more often than not, the DM's going to go no. Now, when it comes back to your question on... Who's shaking the table?
Sorry.
Okay. When it comes back to your question on why DMs won't let you play monster races in games, it's as simple as this. Most of the world... think about it from if you were in your hometown and a bugbear walked in.
And said hi.
What are you going to do? You... more often than not, are going to walk away, run away, or just,
Scream.
Release some excrement from your bowels, and then possibly stand there dumbfounded until you find out that, oh, that's a good bugbear walking into town, not a one that's going to rip everyone's head off within 5 feet. Oh, wait, I'm wrong, as it rips someone's head off. You never really know, and as such, as a DM, you kind of have to make the decision, do I want the player to have to deal with that frustration? Because, like in the Drow, or going back to Driss, he is technically a monster to anyone he comes across right up until they actually get to know him. He's a monster. His race is known for brutal atrocities. How often does he get chased away because of that? Just because of that. Now, you're talking about an actual monster, not a race of sentient beings that can choose good or evil, but a monster who's any natural talents, abilities, and way of dealing and thinking are supposed to be brutal and visceral.
Now, I would say, as far as the demigod goes, if you wanted to do something like Solaire from Dark Souls, where you don't know you're spoilers, where you don't know you're essentially a god, and you've lost all your power, and you're essentially just immortal that has no memory of being a god. If your DM wants to, that could make a cool campaign thing.
Yeah, that could be a definite good chance.
So, I mean, if you wanted to do that at the end of your long-term campaign, you get to be a demigod. That's something that could be fun to do. I would say that you're still asking if you're asking to do that, you're going to have one or two things happen. One, you're only going to get to be a demigod in the very last part of the game, like the very last session. Or two, you're going to have a couple times where you have something cool happen, and you release some of that demigod power, but you can't hold it. And I think that's the better way to go, because I think you get to do more fun things, and the DM has more to work with when it comes to having campaign effects.
Well, right. I think that another way to do that is basically just how the players relate to the rest of the world. Like, if we're essentially the only ones with class levels, and we're a reasonably high level, like level 10, and everyone else is like 3 hit die peasant, the claim to demigod status isn't really unreasonable.
Yeah. It's what you're trying to do with that demigod that will determine whether or not, if you're trying to get powers because you're the son of a god, then you're asking a lot, and your DM is going to either have to do the slow approve, non-approve, or we'll see, and then,
that is another thing. Everybody's if you're a demigod, how are you going to relate to what are you going to do about your parents?
Uh-huh.
What about your party?
Yeah.
That's the real question I have, is how can you justify your party if you are a demigod?
Everybody's a demigod. Percy Jackson time.
Well, and that's one way to do it, and that's why I'm saying you can do something there's something a DM can do with that campaign hook, but you're going to need to work with them. I don't think you should be going in just to have power. I think you need to have more of a growth with it.
All right, so D12, next question.
I would actually like to take this next one.
Oh, well, certainly.
From Vincent Needler, he wants a full breakdown on guns. I would like to say here and now, we are planning on doing another gun video in the future. This is not the time or place to go into guns.
Seriously, we'll take up me and DA will take up the rest of the video time if we actually try.
And I think you can look forward to seeing another video on the subject in the near future.
And a verbal altercation.
Yeah, whenever
All right,
it comes
in
to
the meantime, don't look down the barrel, point it forward, remember to clean your weapon after use.
Oh, and I guess the one thing that's obvious is that no matter what, the
Don't
guns...
take a gun to school. If a police officer pulls you over, do not reach for the gun or where it is held. Just simply tell them where it is.
Tell them that you have it. Tell
And
them that
where
it's
it is.
there. And then promptly put your hand, reach for the sky
Yeah.
as they remove it from your
Unless
person.
the gun is in the sky. Let's be perfectly clear there. You don't want to do that.
Now, if your gun is in the sky, I have several questions for you, but I'm going to let those float
Anti-craft
in the
bullets?
universe.
Well, no, that's the gunslinger summoner build where the Eidolon has the gun and he flies over you.
Right, and he's got invisible tentacles, so
Yeah.
it's just floating there.
That's actually a pretty cool idea.
Yeah, I know, I just thought of
Also, it's more a literal interpretation of gunslinger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're just throwing it. Woo! It's in the air.
I thought,
it's a gun
I
with
thought
returning.
that during the Bayonetta opening.
Esquire, lyricist? Mm-hmm. Alright, cool. I had a few questions for the D6 Damage crew. I know you do. Man, you got 5 of them. That's pretty good right there. Alright. What is your opinion on Ultimate Wilderness / Shifter base class?
Well, yeah. Do we want to take this one question?
One
at
question
a
at a time, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna definitely
Let's hit Ultimate Wilderness,
Bam.
then go with the shifter.
Then go shifter. Okay.
Yeah, alright, so
I think that's fair.
I think that's a good idea.
Ultimate Wilderness. I think everything that Paizo has put out, honestly, has been nothing but good or at least decent additions.
Yeah, they're
to
good.
the
They're good for
to the
certain
game.
niches of gamers. Like for me, I don't usually play druids. The most nature I go is ranger, so I kind of have a passing interest in this book.
We just recently got our hands on a copy of Ultimate Wilderness, and I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of it. I do have some problems with it. I would say
The Leshy being
no,
limited.
the archetypes in it are great. I think it's a wonderful addition. I think the races in it have some really fun potential, but are really, really hard to justify in just about any campaign.
Letting
And
somebody play one is going to be
it's
full teeth.
tough.
Full teeth.
It's tough, and it feels like
I
favoritism.
feel like you'd have to reboot the setting just to make it make sense.
Yeah, it's,
In some of the creatures' cases, mostly the plant people, any of the plant people races, you're looking at that going, you were a monster. I didn't know you existed because you were in such an obscure location that, oh my god, hey, you're cool. And then, what are you again?
Rock person?
I also think the Goron is just horribly written. I think the concept of not being able to reproduce in any way, shape, or form,
Oh,
and being
that
limited
was the Goron's problem.
and limited to a single, everyone is from this one place. I think that was silly. I would have done it differently. I think playing a Fae with the Gathlane, I think is what they're called, is a cool idea, but again, you have to justify you playing a Fae. Like, that's hard to do.
Playing a Fae easy enough, you know. I mean, I can think of at least 5 reasons to play a Fae in most campaigns. The problem is that you have to think of a reason that your DM will allow.
Yeah. Oh,
And
you're right.
there-
I can see a reason to play because you can play a Cavalier on a giant beat.
And it's an actual thing that the class is supposed to do.
Yeah, it's actually something you can do. Now, however, you allowing it, I mean, as a GM, I don't know. It's hard.
It really
Yeah,
is.
we went from Guardians of the Galaxy, not even to Monty Python, but into He-Man, Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, I think that's
So, with Ultimate Wilderness,
I do have the power.
I definitely recommend it. I think that it's a great addition to your Pathfinder collection. I think it gives you options for lots of cool things. I like the plant stuff with the weird fruits that do things like the acid lemon tree. I think that's fun. The archetypes are all pretty cool.
I honestly can't recommend the book to players. There's no way I could recommend it to players. That is a DM or GM book, and it's that way because it kind of gives them that option of including it. But as soon as they've made the decision, then they have to make changes to their world because there are things in there that are just straight up world-changing events or world-changing
no
items.
offense, in my half of the setting, I didn't have talking trees. I I didn't have a that come to the Prime Material playing on their own.
Yeah.
All right. So
Now
what do we
for
think?
the shifter.
Yeah. What do we think of the shifter?
Or shifter base class.
Is this different from the shifter races?
Well, that's
No.
the
Skinwalker.
Oh, my bad.
The shifter, I think it looks neat. I would be willing to try one. I don't know if it's got like all-time staple potential, but looks neat.
I really like it, and I like especially some of the stupid archetypes with it, like the one where you turn to oozes and stuff. I really like. I think it fits a niche in the game that was not.
That's because
that was tried to be covered with a couple archetypes for like the ranger and the barbarian, but just didn't really fit. I think that the shifter class looks really interesting. I'd love to try it, and I really like the idea of being able to turn my. There's a picture in the book where he turns his hand into like a metal ooze that turns into the spike ball, and that looks really cool. So that concept I really like.
Honestly,
I like the elemental one where you turn into elemental stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty cool too.
It's like I look at the shifter and I go, "Oh, look, 3.5's druid, only minus sans spellcasting and all about that wild shape." Okay, that's what I've got here. 3.5's druid, slightly worse saves, way better attacks, and that's what you got yourself. You got yourself a 3.5 druid that's been altered.
All right. So what's our next question?
All right, next question.
Feelings towards the upcoming Pathfinder 2e playtest.
I am looking forward to playtesting 2e, although how you know I'm about to playtest 2e, I'm not really
How
sure.
do you know that? Are you a wizard?
We
Of
didn't
course you
announce
are. You're playing
anything.
Pathfinder.
Did we announce that we were doing a playtest?
No.
Because I don't
No.
remember.
No.
Because I knew I was going to.
I was
but-
doing a joke.
I
mean,
would
that would have been freaking awesome.
I have read next to nothing on it, and by next to nothing, I mean nothing. I am interested to see what changes they make. I would like to see how it competes with 5th edition. I would love to playtest it, but at the moment, I can only say I'm excited.
I am waiting with bated breath.
Fingers crossed.
All right. Next question. Would you recommend trying out Starfinder? Yes.
No.
Maybe.
There, we're done.
Force and Destiny, anybody?
There, that's 4 different opinions in 1 minute of talking.
But yeah, main reason why is you get to add. You can literally take your standard Pathfinder, take your standard character from Pathfinder, and go into
Are we?
right angle stupidity.
No offense, but is Starfinder just Pathfinder, but kind of like 40k is to Warhammer?
Well, it's yes and no. There are space. They've gone to the effort of like making a lot of things that are in space. Like they have space races. It's not like we have space dwarves and space elves, although we have things which are a little like that. They want to be They want to be evocative of Pathfinder.
Also, technically, if you are playing in the official setting of Galarion, you are already playing Starfinder.
Yes, you are, because they're backwards compatible.
That is the way they chose to write their game. Is the way they chose to write their lore. They
Kind of cool.
They put in a lot of things that said, "Look, you are in one world in a large galaxy in a large universe, and in that way you can travel in between Pathfinder and Starfinder regularly, and that's kind of cool. I just don't like playing in a sci-fi setting for the most part." So that's really the only reason I wouldn't recommend it. That, and I find a lot of the sci-fi settings to just be a little too cheesy for me, which is funny because I like a lot of good cheese.
Seriously.
But I don't know. It's never been an appeal to me.
So what you're saying is it's not Gouda.
Yeah, it's
No,
not
I
good
didn't
enough.
say that.
It might be sharp, maybe some Swiss, but definitely not Gouda.
That theory has some holes in it.
Yep.
Each of you take 3d6 pun damage.
I can't. I'm sorry. I'm immune to
pun
pun damage. All right. So, have you ever used third-party materials, classes, features, etc.? Do you recommend any particular third-party publishers? Yes and no.
Well, wasn't the Hunter technically third party until it was approved in...
No, it's a first-party class.
Yeah, it was the first party.
I would say that there is a couple third-party books that Paizo has endorsed saying, like, yeah, we would have written this if we had thought about it. The one being, like, Path of War is the big one. And there's got some really cool things in there. I would generally, again, stay away from third-party stuff as far as playing goes. But like I said, there are some gyms in there that aren't terribly unbalanced that might be worth implementing.
Yeah,
A lot of it is sort of how you want your world to work, and with third-party stuff, it's all optional.
Yeah,
But you also have things like the ability to play as My Little Pony in Pathfinder in the third-party section. So you kind of really have to sift through it to find the things that you think fit your world and the things that you think will benefit the players.
and then obviously, if you're the GM, go over it with your players first, because there are certain things that somebody's just going to look at and be like,
No.
"Dude, I joined this to play a half-elf wizard,
Not a pony."
not watch a pony walk up to me and start talking. I mean, I can see it as a polymorphed animal that got all this
they need a
rigmarole
fee for that.
happened, but no,
You
man.
lost me.
I agree.
Your world needs to be part you, part your players, and it grows. And it needs to be an ever-living, ever-growing thing, not a, oh, that event was cool. All right, next time we play, the world hasn't changed, and...
I would say if it's content that's open to players, then all players should agree on it before you use it. I think if it's something that, like a kind of trap or a kind of spell or something that you don't see the players having access to, that's something that I think you as the GM get to decide, because they simply shouldn't have the information about upcoming encounters. But I do agree, if you're offering someone the ability to use third party as like a race or a class or something, you should go over it, and you should go over it thoroughly with every player.
All right. I think we're all excited for this next question.
I don't know if we're all excited, but I definitely know we're waiting with bated breath on this
Man,
one.
there's so many good ones.
What is your
Honestly, I'm
most
having
hilarious? What is your most hilarious gaming fail in Pathfinder /D&D? D6, go on this one and go with the. What is your most hilarious gaming fail in Pathfinder /D&D? I mean, do you separate the two, or do you leave them together?
You know, the two are kind of one. So there have been so many. I think my favorite.
Before you answer, do you want to do this from your DM's perspective or from one of your player perspectives, as in when you were playing a character?
I'm gonna do
Let's do both.
Yeah, we're gonna do both.
So we'll start with the player one.
So my favorite one was from one of our friends who's been on the D6Damage podcast. He's the guy in the dwarf video. I think it's D4 was what we ended up.
I thought it was
for him.
Oh no,
No,
wait,
he's D4.
Yeah.
He's D4.
So D4 was playing cleric, and we were in this the city setting, and the players had just found this courier who was sort of transporting secret messages for the resistance against the city's evil government. And the courier says, "Who are you guys? Are you my client?" And D4 says, "What if we're not your client?"
Okay, that sounds more like a fail on D4 on D4's behalf, and that's not even his biggest fail.
Okay, I think that's actually one of his biggest fails, but I love him, and it's a story I love to tell. I would not have him have done it any other way. My character thoroughly punched him in the face and took over the conversation, but...
As he does.
Well, when something needs... you don't let someone just walk up and say, "What if we're not your client?" and then let him continue the conversation. I'm sorry. That was justified. As you playing?
I would say probably one of my biggest fails. Let's see. There was this one ghoul fight in Rise of the Rune Lords, and I thought I was being so goddamn smart. I was backing up because I was sure they were coming from this one direction, and I was backing toward this field of wheat, and there was a fucking ghoul behind me. It gets me, and did I make the save? No, I did not make that save. I was miles away from the rest of the party thinking, "Oh, look, I'm cool, aloof sniper man. No one's going to do anything to me. I'm fine." And then I just get hit by a ghoul, paralyzed. I would have died. Almost killed.
Yeah,
It was that 3 different times, mind you. 3 different times in that one paralysis.
3 fucking times. I had to save your ass.
Yep. And then you almost because of it.
Well, then he did die later from paralyzing, but
Yeah.
Let's not talk about that yet.
I think that's your greatest. No, I'm kidding.
Actually, that's a good question.
That is a good one, though. Yeah, we're moving on to you.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So
DM.
D8.
So as a DM, let's start as a DM for all of us.
Yeah.
Are we talking personally as a DM?
I'm-
My
Yeah,
biggest
no,
failure?
No, yeah, your DM, like when you did something and you realized you screwed, or somebody did something.
Yeah,
that made
I think it
you,
should be somebody, including yourself.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can go many ways about this. I could talk about Zeus and his coffin full
There was nothing
of
wrong with
obsidian
that.
taking over Falcon's Hollow slowly but surely.
If-
I could
if-
talk
if
about
you would give me more.
I could talk about Zafon and how he just went and entered the jam no matter who he was fighting.
Come on and slam.
Or I could talk. Or I could just talk about the train wreck that was the Underdark campaign.
I think you skipped the one where we held person your mini boss.
Yeah.
I think that one was a good one.
Yeah.
Because
Although
I
that
think
one
you,
was
I think
only
you
a
gave
fail
some
on his
love
part.
over on this part of the table, but then ignored D6 over there for the trials that I would like to point out he had some part in.
Hey, you know, it's not my fault that the whole person DC was like
Oh, right,
28.
Oh yeah, his
Not
compulsion
your fault.
his compulsion
it's completely my
specialist. I got this. I fucking built this fucking anti-paladin to take on D8's big ass berserker tiefling. It was going to be an awesome battle. It was going to take him to his single-digit health points, and then this fucker stun locked him.
Stun locks and
And I came up and finished it.
GG.
Yeah,
Yeah, coup de grace.
Off with his head.
it was pretty great.
All right.
Well, no, he
Player.
Yeah.
A player.
Player.
Yeah. What was your biggest mistake? Fail. I like how he used fail.
I could
He
talk about
failed.
I could talk about Durkin flying off the bridge. I could talk about him dying due to D12's need to hold a grudge against some guy he never met.
D12 has a love for people he's never met.
Am I forgetting one?
What was the time with the bridge?
The guy.
You might as well.
Oh, the bridge!
I was
Yes!
just to say, you kept bringing up that fucking
No,
wily...
I want to do it. I want to do that one.
Okay, you can tell
I don't
it, but
remember
honestly,
it. I don't remember it. You should
but
do
honestly, I'm gonna do... Oh.
it. I honestly don't.
Well, first, I think I'm going to admit my first RP failure was when I joined his city campaign that D4 did the...
D6. Oh, you mean D4?
Oh,
yeah.
did We're Not Your Clients.
Yeah,
Well, if we're not your clients. This was my first character. I played a bard, and I was just like, he's going to tell an amazing story, and he heard from second draft about the freaking shenanigans they gone to for fighting this freaking anti-paladin called Pazuzu. So what do? I go to the officials and ask them about it, almost getting me executed and forcing myself to play a ballad for the city's evil overlord.
Gosh, I don't remember that.
I'm surprised you don't.
I know. I'm surprised too.
You actually helped me write a bit of it.
Oh, that doesn't surprise me.
All right.
But should I talk about the bridge as your DM?
Yeah, do the bridge because I can't remember the details.
Okay, is this gonna be your DM story?
No, go ahead. I have more things I can do.
Okay. DA was fuck. Why am I brain farting? He was
DMing Rise of the Rune Lords.
Thank you.
And we were at a part involving a bridge.
Yeah, and unbeknownst to me and unbeknownst to the rest of the party, that it was sabotage. That more than two people were 5 feet apart from each other while walking upon this bridge. It would go slack, and we'd have to make reflex and acrobatic saves to not fall.
And it was a long drop, and there was water at the bottom.
I'm surprised the fall didn't kill me, honestly.
I rolled for it. I remember I did the damage. It just wasn't enough to kill you.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I played a cleric. Not doing me any favors there. But the way I play a cleric is I get the heaviest armor that I'm able to wear. And I get a big ass fucking sword, and I just go balls to the wall. while buffing people as I fight.
Now, I seem to recall you falling off the bridge twice.
Yeah.
Yes. First time I caught the rope. And then, as I was trying to rebalance myself, I fell.
Now, this was
you know,
in no
it's not like
small
it
part.
ended that bad. There was only a bunyip down there.
Oh no, they killed the bunyip before.
Yeah, we killed
Oh,
the
The
bunyip
bunyip
before
was before this.
No,
Though that was a fun story too.
but no, the best part about this was as he's dangling off the bridge, my character is basically tightrope walking, looking down at him like, come on. And
Yeah,
he
you rolled like
starts...
a nat 20, didn't
Yeah,
you?
I nat 20'd it, so I literally just
Yeah, he was
myself onto
being
the
freaking
handrail.
Legolas going on.
With his toes.
Yep.
Gripping it with his toes as he walks across, yeah.
And I was like, come on, and I even helped him get back up right as he failed the second time, so I tried to catch him even, and it just wasn't happening, man. The dice were against his survival of that incident at that moment.
Honestly, I'm thankful to D8 that he didn't actually kill me there.
Yeah.
I rolled for it. I didn't pull any punches.
I'm surprised he didn't make me drown.
I might pull punches because mainly in that case it would have been because swimming takes forever.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay.
regardless of whether or not it's a serious situation or not, it's just so much work and so much time goes into it.
Anyway, this is half the reason I play the game for these stories. D8's turn.
Okay, as a
start with you,
DM,
yeah.
I was playing I'm running Giant Slayer, as I've said before, and there's a part where there's a fort and there's the option to infiltrate it, and there's like 3 whole pages on how to infiltrate it and how to run it if they infiltrate it and who they can talk to try to get support within the fort and that kind of stuff. And my PCs spent 2 days observing the fort and picking out the guards and like figuring it out and doing reconnaissance on it. And then the rogue's like, all right, I'm gonna go sneak in. And he does. He sneaks in successfully. That's not the problem. He even slips into a manhole that covers a secret entrance, essentially. And then he's immediately attacked by 2 gray oozes, right? Because they just live there. And he doesn't fight them. He pushes through them. He pulls himself through the oozes and gets away from them because they can't move very fast. And gets into this pit, which he climbs himself out of, and he comes out in the bathroom on the 2nd story of the fort. And so he's hanging on, or he's doing there, and he hears footsteps, and he's like, "Uh-oh, I'll hide in the bathroom." And so, of course, I like to have fun. So one of the guards decides to, visit the toilet, the privy, and a short fight ensued where the rogue was thoroughly, horribly, and quite brutally destroyed and taken prisoner. But what made this kind of fail, because it wasn't on my part, like I had no control over what this guy was doing. He decided to go all the way in on his own,
ditching the party.
Yeah, just went totally all in while the rest of the party is preparing potions.
I mean, I guess that's nice reconnaissance.
Yeah, but it's not reconnaissance if you can't get out.
This is true.
Yeah, and so it wasn't like really that useful. So they were making potions, and they were doing all their buff spells and getting ready for this fight. And he gets captured, and they immediately know because the bells are going crazy in the fort, and it's all sorts. So what they do is they proceed to slaughter every living thing within the fort. In a matter of, I think the whole contest was over within 10 minutes game time. It was silly. It was so silly that they had all this preparation worked out, and it was completely thrown away by this rogue. And they ended up going through and just absolutely destroying the entire fort. There was no need for those 4 pages on infiltration. There was no need for those 4 pages on who they could talk to try to get support in there. There was no need for all the side areas or all the secret entrances. They walked right up to the front door, walked right in, and killed every single orc in the place. It was nuts, and I felt...
No offense, that's kind of your playstyle.
Yeah, I agree, but I felt, as the DM, a little annoyed, because it's like...
It felt like a fail on your part,
well,
because
yeah,
they did
like,
all that work, and then you're like...
And the enemies couldn't touch him.
Yeah.
I mean, they just destroyed him, and it was like, well... There was I'd set it up so that the rogue could have his fun infiltrate mission. It's something he'd never gotten to do and always wanted to do as the character. Never got to sneak anywhere. I finally give him the real opportunity to do it, And what does he do? Immediately get himself beaten half to death and unconscious and taken prisoner.
He overdid it.
Yeah, it was funny.
All right, so player.
Okay, I have kind of two here because I have one observed by another player in the game, and that was it was a year or two before the What If We're Not Your Clients, and we had gone into, as the party, we'd gone into the Forbidden Pyramid and killed the mummy that's in the pyramid and taken the golden rod that was magical for whatever reason. I don't even remember the circumstances of why we took it, but then we go outside and we there was more than that. We went outside and we talked to the nomads, the dragonborn nomads that were in the that lived in the area, and my dragonborn sorcerer bud pulls out we start talking to him about the pyramid and about the pharaoh and about his magical rod, and then my bud goes, "You mean this rod?" And he just pulls it right out right in front. It's like, we just grave robbed these people's ancestral site, pulled their magical item out of their tomb, destroyed their mummy, and you're just gonna pull it out and be like, "Oh, you mean this one?"
See, I thought that was going to be the Scarab of Goldenbane story.
No. Oh, that was a good one, too, where I walked around and started taking all the gems that were like the power conduits out of golems by using the Scarab of Goldenbane. No, the fail as a player, I generally try not to remember my fails. So,
when you got disintegrated by Crowley?
that was not my fault.
You rolled a 1.
No, it was a fireball, and
You rolled a 1.
well, yeah, but he would have killed me either way because one of our party members decided to do let's just attack the evil bad guy instead of let's try to escape. I think one of my biggest fails was fighting D6's fun techno zombies that are powered by bees and hatred, where the whole idea was you were supposed to use non-lethal damage in order to knock them out so the bees didn't explode and attack you, and never figuring out that I could use never thinking even once about non-lethal damage, and all just cutting them open instead.
No offense, Pathfinder isn't really a system that promotes non-lethal
Well, I mean, but you
options.
can use it really easily, and it's exactly what he had planned for the whole situation. He even gave us hints, repeatedly, and I just never considered it. Another one, I had it before I thought about this, and now I can't remember what it was. Poop. Oh, well, if I remember it, I'll get back to it.
All right. So for me, most of mine are going to be
Oh,
from the
I
DM's
remembered it.
perspective. All right.
I walked in and I had, and this was on our first game with D10 when he was playing his bard, and I had walked in and he had referred to an NPC as their proper name, which I refused to acknowledge, and I named them Sprinkles instead, and I turned around and I had to Cestus, and I punched him in the back of the head to try to teach him who's boss. I rolled a nat 20. And I rolled another nat 20.
And I think you rolled another nat 20.
And
he fucking insta-killed me.
And it was great. It was great. I rolled a 19, I think is what it was. It was almost an insta-kill. And even then, the critical damage was almost enough to seriously wound you. And it was like, that was a joke. It was not supposed to do any kind of damage. And,
You're all, I'm going to do a D3.
Well, I don't have a
I
mechanic.
deal 20 damage.
I brained the dude, and it was like, oh my god, I was trying just to make a point.
I mean, that same campaign, I have another failure, which I don't think I'm ever gonna.
All right. Well, anyway.
Yeah, D12.
All right. So for mine, mine are mostly from the DM's perspective because I spent a large portion of my time playing as a DM. I'm going to give you 2 because they let you know just kind of some of the shenanigans that happened. The first one is probably the player's favorite, and that group's favorite fail overall was they were in a floating castle fighting against a dragon that was basically raging across the countryside, just destroying whatever he wanted, doing his own thing. Finally, the dragon is like, okay, I'm going to take your castle since you guys praise it so much, and the party had finally gotten to the castle to mount its defense, and the party were loading ballistas and firing, and they were just doing decent amounts of damage, and they were just having a blast, and then one of the party members is sitting up there, and he's trying to get this ballista loaded because the bolts were so heavy, because they were designed to take out colossal category dragons. We're talking The big old red
Oh, wow.
is what they were fighting. So he's loading this bolt, and I make him roll a little strength check after to place it in and adjust it just right. And he gets his hand stuck on a nat 1. And while he's frustrating trying to get his hand unstuck, he gets the bolt in a perfect position. And he's like, all right, cool, it's in position. I just got to get my hand out. Well, while he's sitting up there doing this, he's kicking and pulling and shoving, and he kicks the rod that fires the mechanism on another failed nat 1. Now, if you see where this is going, you don't. Because on the third one, where he finally just tries to just dish the glove to let it go, just to let the bolt fly and him survive, he gets a nat 1 on the reflex save. So he gets launched with the bolt at the dragon. Now I roll just to see where it's going to hit, the bolt, if it's going to hit. The bolt misses completely. But the character, a dwarf in probably the strongest armor I've ever built in a game, flies headfirst into a dragon. And he does 1 point of damage to the dragon. I think he doesn't die on impact because his armor protects him. But there's a problem. He's now over a mile up in the sky. No wings. No way of holding on to the dragon. Fails the last check possible to save his life, which was a reflex to grab anything and not fall. And falls the mile to the planet, where he makes a small crater and is gel. But the armor survives. We roll, and it's pristine. Nothing happened to the armor. Fired into a dragon, nothing happened. Falls a mile, nothing happened. The armor's pristine, but there's jelly inside. That character.
So, if you want to hear this story again, watch the dwarf video with D4.
Because you can guess who it was.
This was long before I even joined the group, and I still feel bad for the guy.
Now, the other really amazing fail involves a dragon and some sort of squid custom monster I made, where the party is literally sneaking through the dragon's lair. They get to the other side. The dragon, because, he loves calamari, and keeps this monster here so he can rip off tentacles and eat them. And then he'll slowly let the monster grow its tentacles back. Well, the monster and the party, they decided they were going to meet. And unfortunately, because, nat 1s are actually a thing and they're supposed to happen.
And D4's in the game.
One of the party decides they're going to charge up and stab.
Was it D4 again?
No, it was not
but
D4.
he was in the game, wasn't he?
Well, runs up and goes to stab it. And he falls in the water, and the squid just kind of slowly starts to drown him, while the party spends the entire fight trying to save this character to no avail. No matter what they do, every time they go for the strength check, somebody rolls below a 10. Every time they go for okay, we'll just cut it off of them. They can't cut that one limb. For some reason, everybody who's rolling on that particular limb is failing. They can hit any other limb they want. They're rolling just fine. But on that limb, they're just, no, we must save him. 10 rounds later, you see the final burbles of air pockets as he's still drowning. And finally, someone gets him. They think they get him out. But they realize, no, it's somebody else's armor. He's been drug into the maw and eaten while they were cutting on that one tentacle.
They were on the wrong one the whole time?
Yes.
That's pretty good.
All right, so last one. This is D20's favorite fail.
Wait, we never got a player fail from him.
Oh, sorry. Did you have one more?
Yeah. From player's perspective,
The mask in the tree was a good one.
oh god, that I don't know if that was a fail or a success.
I think it was.
Yes!
I would argue it was a fail at first because you went with an object and an idea, and it just turned out to be completely wrong. But
Yep.
it ended up working anyway.
Yeah, for real. All right, I can tell that story because that was a pretty fun one. Oh no, I can't, because there's a part of it that I'm missing. The lead up into that moment. Because I just remember the moment.
There was a dungeon. We were going through all the dungeon floors. It was a dungeon that had magical floors. It was an unending dungeon with all these different things in it. And we walk into this one room. We had a huge party. And
I feel like this is the D20 one you were going to tell.
No, it's a different one.
And it was a huge party, and we were playing 3.5, and there's this huge tree and a bunch of little trees and stuff in there. It turns out there's a cool monster
The orc rot.
It was called an orc rot tree, which basically drops these pods that turn to orcs.
As close to orcs as you can get without them actually being, 40k orcs, copyright and all that.
It was a kind of a dragon themed thing, so we had all these different colored masks that we were trying to get. It was kind of Tiamat flavored.
Definitely Tiamat
and so it would appear that one of the masks was bonded into the wood of this great orc rot tree. And so while most of us are lighting walls of flame and running away, D12 here comes up with a brilliant idea.
It's a brilliant strategy. I mean, I thought
throw myself at him.
It was gonna work, and it worked. Just nowhere near how I planned it. I get up there, I'm getting my butt kicked. I get a good grip on it, and I'm like,
because the tree can attack too.
Yeah, the tree was kicking my butt, so I get a good grip on it, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna hold on for all I'm worth. And I get high enough that I think I nat 20 the grip. So when it pulls me hard enough to rip my arms off.
Okay. So what he does is he runs up, and he climbs past it, and he does some maneuvers, and he gets hit a couple times, and he manages to get to the mask and grabs onto it, and he's like, all right! And he tugs as hard as he can, and it doesn't move an inch. And he tugs as hard as he can, and he's rolling high, it doesn't move an inch. It's completely bonded into the wood. And so he cannot tear it off, and he goes, well, shit. And then it's the tree's turn. And then she grabs him. And decides to pull him up so it can chuck him.
No, it was going to eat me.
Oh, it was going to eat you? That's right, it's got a mouth.
Yep, it had that mouth up there, and I just found that when I got ripped off. It was like, oh
no! So you grab onto the mask with all your might.
I put everything into it, and literally, DM rolls. He goes, okay, yeah, you're going up. Now, here's the question. Do you take the mask with? He rolls. I get to keep the mask, which causes all number of bad things to happen.
Oh, completely trivializes the dungeon room.
Oh, yeah, because I pretty much insta-kill it because I removed it.
Well, it got a nat 20 on the grab,
yeah.
And the pull was the thing, and then you got a nat 20 on the holding on.
Yeah.
And so he just rips it right off and kills himself.
And it was just like...
It broke every bone in your body.
Yeah, I was shattered because of how he gripped me. It was just crunch, and I was just... I'm a meat bag with a skull.
It jingles a little bit.
And
it's like a coin purse.
If it weren't for our party having a healer right then and there, I literally technically
probably should have died. Yeah.
But I succeeded because while my idea completely failed, the RP moment that ensued from it was a complete success.
Alright, so this is the last D20 fail. So there's a stupid item called the Ring of Bureaucratic Wizardry. Now what it does is when you cast a spell, it summons paperwork, one sheet per spell level, and you have to fill it out before you can cast a spell. So if you're casting a 3rd level spell, you need to spend 3 rounds doing paperwork. He gave it to a warlock. Now he didn't realize that warlocks have spell-like abilities.
Instead of spells. That was pretty amusing.
So the guy didn't have to do anything and was able to continually blast.
It was a cursed item, so he couldn't take it off.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter. So.
All right, so our next set of questions comes from
the Inn of Planar Crossroads, which is cool because I always had the same idea, and I really, absolutely applaud your choice of name.
All right, so the first question from the Inn of Planar Crossroads is, what are your thoughts on Pathfinder 2e playtest? Well, we kind of already gave our thoughts on that.
Be fun to try it.
Yeah. The next question is, have you thought about doing collaborations or videos with other channels?
That's kind of up to you.
Yeah, well, I'm completely willing to do it.
Eventually
if we're
my channel
offered.
will get off the ground.
Yeah. So, we're perfectly willing to do crossovers with other channels. We'd love to, play with any of the other, YouTube guys who do D&D.
I feel like this is going to be a long one.
All right, so what themes come up most in your games? Now, I'm going to say this should apply to both characters and DMs. So, D12, why don't you start us off?
Okay, well, from
let's just pick a few because we spent a lot of time on that last one.
Yeah, we really did.
It was fun.
What theme comes up most often in your games? All right, in my games, I typically do a lot of MacGuffin things where there's this one object that everybody wants, yada yada. But I think that one's honestly it is so bread and butter that it comes up so often that most of the people
It's
Especially-
archetypical at this point.
Especially since I do a lot of free flowing DMing, where I let my players they make their characters and they kind of go with the I kind of wanted to do a story based on insert topic. Okay, well now I'm building the story based on a combination of what they wanted to do and what I was planning to do, and trying to see if I can combine the two. If I can't combine the two, then how best can I make their story entertaining so they come back so I can do my story?
So you're adaptable, is what you're saying.
Yeah, but I tend to start with the MacGuffin and then kind of go from there.
Okay.
One object.
Well, it's a good one to do. I think
closest thing we have to
gives you a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah, the closest thing we had to a MacGuffin in the campaign where my champion died was probably that black dragon egg that we never got to.
Yeah, that was your first MacGuffin in that campaign.
All right, D8.
Well, what about for players?
Oh, sorry.
Like as a player, what character theme do you like to use a lot?
My favorite class is the Thief/Rogue. And because of that, I tend to do a lot of characters, even when I'm not playing a thief, that are about, they want to keep something either secret or they want to acquire wealth and power. And that's kind of like a rogue's bread and butter, and that's kind of how the theme of my characters for most games end up going. Like, I'll see some campaigns where that's not a wise or bright idea, and I'll jump off and do something else,
or go right at it,
or I'll just plunge head deep into it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's my theme for a reason. And when I'm not doing the rogue, that's all about coveting the power. It's the necromancer who's about making the power.
I would say, as far as DMing goes, I like I said, I pretty much only do modules, but I do modify them to a bit. And one of the big themes I like to do is I like to do the gods and how they can interact with the physical world and their limitations, and so I like to play a lot on faith and on what you're willing to do for your god in order to be chosen. That it's not a one-way street; it has to be two-way. You have to give something up for them to give you something. And how they can only act under very certain circumstances, and that's why you have to give something. As a player, I generally have a lot of family betrayal themes.
Boys with daddy issues.
Well, it's not only daddy issues.
And it's sometimes girls with daddy issues.
That's only once. I don't think I'll ever do that again.
All within the same family tree.
All within the same family tree, which makes sense because they all have family issues.
Well, that's
I generally do family issues. I also prefer characters who are not heroes. I think I prefer characters who are in it, if not for themselves, then at least for an idea they believe in that's not necessarily good. Yeah. Like, I love Callistra. Callistra is my favorite god in the Pathfinder universe because I love her vengeance aspect. And I think that's the kind of thing I like to do.
All right, D10.
Well, as a DM, I'm not entirely sure if I've gotten a consistent theme going on, but usually I like to run...
your player playing in almost all of your campaigns so far, you have a god issue. Or god complex. It depends on who you ask.
And a heroism thing.
Yeah, that's where he gets it from. He wants there to be a hero.
Big heroism.
And because he wants there to be a hero...
Okay, are we talking about my DM style?
Yeah, that's your DM style.
Well, you do it in both, but the DM style is specifically.
Yeah, that's the one I see.
The story that you like to tell has to have heroes.
Yeah. That's probably just a writing crutch in my MP. If I'm being honest with myself.
Well,
yeah, but it's just a common theme.
Yeah, it's not a difference.
Now, is it your favorite theme, or is it your most pertinent theme? Couldn't say, but it's the one we see.
Yeah.
All right.
But he's still got one for player.
As a player, I'm going to say I'm probably very boring compared to these guys. I'm very traditionalist. I'm, again, very heroic in a lot of... usually try to go heroic.
I can't say boring. You're just vanilla.
You're classic.
Yes. You choose the classic routine.
I think you're boring.
I love characters that are trying to redeem themselves. I love characters that are trying to better themselves. Usually most of my character inspirations come from shonen anime or even comic books themselves. And I'm trying to grow out of that, but right now that is my foundation.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. That's a good foundation.
Yeah.
All right.
Hey, what about you, man?
For me, from a DM perspective, a lot of my campaigns deal with the concept of the vastness of the world and the smallness of the PCs in that world. I typically like to throw them up against things that they haven't typically encountered before, and these are things that are meant to make them feel dwarfed in comparison to it. Like they're charging into unknown territory and fighting things that they don't necessarily understand very well, and kind of uncovering the true nature of the threat is an important aspect of the games that I DM. I also like to stick the main antagonist fairly close to the party. That has gotten me in trouble in more than a few cases. I like to stick something
derails the campaign.
I'm sorry.
Cloak and carrot.
That wasn't just your fault. It was all our fault.
It's always been my fault, at least a little bit, though, because I've done it more than once.
Okay, the rat sack was your fault.
Although the one theme that I always see, your slightly unconventional or less used monsters is nice.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
I see.
But you tend to stick to certain less used monsters. Like you're addicted to swarms.
You're addicted to Eldritch Abominations, and this is just from my opinion. They can disagree with me if they want, but due to the vastness of what we're going against and how small we are, it kind of never feels like we're actually who's important in this story. We feel like the bit players. We feel like the other guys that are supposed to hold the line till the real heroes show up.
I've never felt that way.
No, I can't say that I have, only because I see my character as how he would see his his role.
Though to be fair, usually when I usually try to play my characters with small egos, usually humble, so they don't see themselves as heroes most of the time.
Yeah,
I see a lot of the evil. The evil in the world is brought about by the people in the world in your games.
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of there are no evil actions, only evil people kind of deal. That there's
there are evil actions.
I would also argue that I see a lot of the road to hell is paved with good intentions in your game. I would also say that there is tough choices is another big theme that you like to do. You like to do the many versus the few.
Mm-hmm.
And is it right to make sacrifices? At what point is a sacrifice wrong to make? I think is something you like to do.
So as a player, one of my favorite traits to play is obsession, where I tend to play
Faust. I'm sorry, Faust.
Well, you know,
I like it. So I don't
the devil has good offers. Not necessarily, he doesn't necessarily deliver, and there's always like some clause in there.
I don't know. I have the least reason to be complaining, considering really I just said I'm boring, but that kind of feels like you're one note.
I don't feel that way.
Yeah,
not that he's one note. That's the one note
You're
he
just
plays.
upset because he keeps catching you with it.
constantly.
I would say another trait which is fairly common among my characters is they're never willing to rule out any solution. Summoning Cthulhu to deal with our problems isn't necessarily the ideal solution, but it's a solution.
Destroying half a world to steal a god.
It's an effective solution.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it is.
No.
And that's what I meant by hard choices.
No, it should not.
It shouldn't, but it is.
It shouldn't.
It shouldn't, but it
It
is.
shouldn't even be considered.
I think
No, it
you
should
do
be
a lot of
considered.
pragmatism versus
Yeah,
morality.
That's
And unfortunately, I'm the guy on handicap with that one. I'm
That's
usually
just
the
because
idealist.
And I normally go with pragmatism.
And I will
Not always,
flip flop because depending on what character I'm playing and how my mood at the moment that it is introduced.
No offense, I feel like you're more 75 pragmatism, 25 idealism.
Yeah, but that also depends on the character because certain characters will immediately jump to prag.
Speaking
versus others.
of, the final question from the inn is, what are your favorite legacy characters?
Now, should we pick a number?
Let's just do one each.
Let's just do one each.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah, you're gonna have. I'll let you have more time by letting D6
No,
go first.
there's like there's only two that I get to choose from.
Okay.
But,
All right, well, I'll go first anyway. So I would say one of my favorite legacy characters is this guy called the Harvest Man. The best way I could describe him as is he's basically like a Jack the Ripper meets Dr. Frankenstein.
meets Dr. Bees.
Meets Dr. Bees. One of his best creations were techno-zombies run by bee power.
And hatred.
And, of course, since a villain like that is too fun to have die, when he did die, first off, he got Cthulhuized into a big Cthulhu bird, and he also cloned himself, so he's now got clones running around, each one of which has their own mad science interests. So there's just plenty of, spitting in the face of the gods and nature going on with him. D10.
I have a number of legacy characters, but it's not so much one recurring character, it's more of recurring family. And this was my second character after the Bard. His name was Aaron Colt, and he was a gunslinger. And he basically became my version of the Winchesters from Supernatural, where his descendants continue to fight evil or do whatever they want to do and try to in some way or form.
D8?
My favorite character, and I really wish I could find his sheet because I can't remember his full name, and it's been bugging me for a couple months now, is a guy named Vincent. And I played him. He is my character who was the least min-maxed of all characters I've ever played. He was fun, but I loved him so much I brought him back as an NPC. But he was a double blood sorcerer, Protean and Destined, which do not work well together. But I turned it into luck by marrying those two, and he was the whole idea behind the character. What started out as a Gambit character completely went a different direction, and he became this dude who's always in the right place at the right time, but he doesn't want to be. So it's always the wrong place, the wrong time. He's the kind of guy who accidentally falls through portals and ends up in the middle of a big fair where there's going to be a demon attack and accidentally kills someone who turns out to be the summoner of the demons and gets the whole guard chasing him, but he's running away because he doesn't mean to do anything. It's the kind of character who accidentally does plot stuff. And I ended up making, and this is why I love your name, he ends up making a bar called the Winking Carbuncle. Or the Dancing Carbuncle, excuse me, where he and his...
The Jazz Hands Carbuncle.
He and his familiar Stefano, the Carbuncle, and Stefano's wife, 3 kids, and her 2 brothers, and Vincent's simulacrum, run this interplanar bar that has doors that open to, I think I had 23 different planes. And only adventurers can come through, and he makes a killing off getting alcohol from all these different worlds and selling them, and he claims that they're all limited, when in fact he has them in everfull casks. And he's this great character who's just really out of this world with his personality, and he was a great way to have a lot of fun and silly conversations, and I really enjoyed him. He's my favorite character I've ever played, despite the fact that he was the least min-maxed of every character I've ever played.
All right, D12.
I'm going to have to go with probably the 4th character I made, and it came back 7 times. 7 times she came back. Her name is Whisper. Now, when she was born a halfling, and she went wizard. By the Pathfinder incarnation of her, she has died, been resurrected, changed her bloodline to dragon, became immortal, became a god, became immortal again, like a regular mortal, like all the way back.
Became immortal.
Yeah, so she can go and look for stuff on a different plane. And and after that, it became an immortal, but only because she will not die of living too long.
Mm-hmm.
She can still die by mortal means because she doesn't want to become a god again. It was too boring, and there was not enough information to glean. And all she ever did was literally keep her nose stuck in a book. But because she was a wizard, it was literally like peeps over book, sees something going on that looks like it might be detrimental to the people who are getting her to her next piece of information. Fire all cylinders. Fireballs, lightning bolt, it didn't matter. Pick a spell.
Prismatic spray.
Because she spent all her time researching, she literally had the full repertoire of spells, plus some she had made her own. And it was just brutal but beautiful because she didn't want to fight. She wants information.
Yeah, you have.
You've met her once when you were looking for information. Because she's a font of information. She literally, if she doesn't know it, she'll find it shortly. Unless it involves
an ever full cask of information, if you will.
Yeah, basically, it was literally
an interplanetary bar of information, if you will.
It was literally she's traveled the universe, she's done it all, and at the end of it,
she's been Vincent.
Yeah, she's probably been there. Had
Just
a drink.
sounds like your own version of Squirrel Girl. No offense.
No, because I don't know.
Because there's no squirrels, and I've never heard of her.
Yeah, I don't know who she is. One, and the small fact that literally I made her when I was 12, and it's been a while, I'm not gonna throw my age on there, but it's been a good couple of years. Yeah.
At least
every couple of decades,
at least a
I like to
decade.
bring her back.
Almost every decade I've brought her back out, but that's neither here nor there.
Our next question comes from Epic Woad. I want to get into D&D, but I don't know where I'm supposed to start, Pathfinder or D&D 5th edition. Which do you think is the best for beginners?
Probably 5th edition.
Yeah, I'll agree. I think 5th edition, they make things a lot easier for you. Things are more streamlined. Pathfinder has a lot of different rules, a lot of floating modifiers, a lot of, if you want to do this,
you can.
You can, and we have a rule set for it, or we have a cool archetype for it, or we have some other item or thing.
Or a feat tree.
Or a feat tree. Yeah, there are no real feat trees in 5th edition. There's just a feat.
I think it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for a game with complex character building mechanics and the ability to kind of structurally build a character that is within the game system, allowed to do a set pattern of things and just has that rigidity, but you put that blood, sweat, and tears into making, you go Pathfinder. If you're looking for something that's kind of, okay, I picked a class, I picked a race, alright, what am I doing with it? 5e is pretty straightforward in that, where you're just kind of doing the, okay, I picked this because I like the idea of playing a paladin as an elf. And
or,
set.
Go ahead.
I would answer in a question, and my question would be, are you playing with people who have played before? Because if you're playing with experienced Pathfinder players, it's not that difficult to understand the game as long as they're helping you and walking you through building the character and then telling you, or when you ask if you can do something and then telling you the rules on how to do that, what you want to do, it's not that bad. If you're not playing with an experienced Pathfinder player as a DM or at least on the table with you, then it's going to be very complicated and you're going to get a lot of things wrong. So in that way, 5th edition is a lot easier to understand. And I personally like 5th edition more. I would say if you are at a table with almost all new players, then you're better off playing 5th edition than you are playing Pathfinder. That being said, again, it is always a personal choice.
And who knows, maybe 2nd edition will be more beginner friendly, but still have that complexity.
That's what I'm interested in finding out.
All right, our next question is, what is your recommendation for a no-armor swordsman build like Samurai Jack or Afro Samurai?
Didn't you
I've always wanted to make a character like this, and it is not easy in Pathfinder. I assume we're talking Pathfinder here.
Yeah.
There are a couple archetypes that will help you do that.
Yeah, like wasn't there a swordsman monk that you were going to try out?
There's a human archetype for the monk called a wanderer, where you get a weapon. That one's difficult though, because if you're not choosing one of the few monk weapon swords, then the whole build kind of falls apart. What you can do is the Kinsai Magus is built around the idea, and you can really output a huge amount of damage if you build him really right, but it's not exactly easy to do that. It's very complex, and you have to really dig into the muscles of the game in order to make him work. There's also the Weapon Master Fighter archetype, which gives up armor training, and there's less about armor and more about the weapon, but you also then don't get to really wear any armor, and your AC is super low because you don't have anything to boost it. In that regard, the whole campaign, or I mean the whole game of Pathfinder has a trouble producing the kind of character you're looking to play, simply because if you're not playing a monk, your AC is going to be low because you're not wearing armor. And if you're playing a monk, then you have to be using one of the monk weapons, which are not the weapons you're looking for with one of these two characters. You're looking for like a katana, and that's not a monk weapon.
And unfortunately, you suggested like Samurai Jack or Afro Samurai. As far as I can tell, the Samurai archetypes don't have anything like them.
That's because they're actual traditional samurai in the archetype.
I mean, to be fair, Samurai Jack's a Ronin.
Heck, so is Afro Samurai if you really think about it. But
I
think if you
never
wanna-
watched that show.
It's pretty fun. I think if you want to look outside the monk class, you might have possibilities with Swashbuckler. I know that's not the flavor you're going for, but you can RP it however you want. Or you could go with the Duelist Prestige class, which lets you add your intelligence to your AC.
Yeah, that might work.
Yeah, that could work.
there's a couple of hidden gems out there. There's a Prestige class that lets you add intelligence to your AC. There's one that lets you add charisma to your AC. If you combine those with the class you're looking to do, and you actually do the research for it, you can get your AC up there without actually having to go into any of the guaranteed go into the monk. Although the monk does give you the
Wisdom to AC.
the wisdom to AC,
Well, it
which
also
is one
gives
of
you
the
flat bonuses to it too.
which is one of the greatest ways to do it. And then you just prestige, grab one of the other weapons. Don't worry about flurry of blows, and grab a class that gives you the prestige class and the katana, or not the prestige class, but gives you the feat for katana, or just take the feat and there you
I
go.
would suggest if you're going to prestige into something, or even if you're not, if you're going to just ignore the flurry of blows, which I think you still get a good amount out of the monk class, do human, go wanderer, because you get the weapon familiarity and an exotic weapon, and you'll automatically get that katana you want at first level. And you won't get the flurry blows, but you still get all the key powers, and that might still give you some of the good stuff you're looking for.
And then you dip into anything that gives you a spell casting, and you just add little flavors, like, oh yeah, when he swings.
Also, I feel the need to say, what exactly do we mean by armor? Because in Pathfinder, there are things which will give you bonuses to AC that aren't armor necessarily. And if you want to have one of our favorite sort of rule-bending suits of armor, there's a thing called the Silken Ceremonial, which is armor, but it looks like stylized clothing that you can get enchanted with a fairly high bonus, if you can afford it. There are also the Bracers of Armor.
The Bracers of Armor, Ring of Protection, gives you a
Amulets of
deflection.
natural armor.
Yeah, Amulet of Nat Armor, Ring of Shield. Then you also have, what was it? There's something like one of the Fate Divine classes gives you either a Profane or some type of bonus to AC.
I think those are dependent on War Priest, and that could just be on a certain archetype.
Yeah, could be.
All right. The final Epic Woad question is, have you ever played any games from the World of Darkness series like Vampire the Masquerade?
I've only ever played the computer game of Vampire the Masquerade, and that's back when I was a kid, so I immediately lost all my humanity because I didn't know how the game worked.
Yeah, I played Vampire, I played White Wolf, I played them. They're really entertaining and easy systems, but you gotta go in there, either everyone's gotta be new, or you gotta be the only new guy, because if there are too many of you asking questions, the game gets bogged down by everybody trying to figure out what's going on. But once you've figured it out, the system is really fun and really fluid.
All right, D10. Next question, please.
From Brendan 2. What are your top 5 alchemical items and useful magical items that are universally useful for the group for both combat and non-combat utility? This is an extremely loaded question, just so you know.
It's not loaded. It's just a question that could be extremely stacked in one direction.
Rope of climbing.
Movable rod.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Bag of holding.
Bag of holding, yeah, definitely.
Or handy haversack.
Yeah.
I like the handy haversack. Or in that case, efficient quivers.
Yeah.
D6, you're the alchemical expert among us. What are some universally useful ones?
Alchemical items can be dicey because if they're weapons, like a bomb can certainly be useful if you want to use it like in more of an RP way, like to collapse part of a building or to blow a hole in the wall. You would certainly get value out of that. It's not great as a weapon, really, because they just don't do enough damage to be effective. But I guess if you are coming up against something like swarms, a bomb is certainly potentially helpful. It's a similar case with something like Alchemist Fire or Acid Flasks, where against certain enemy types...
I disagree with Acid Flasks because they can be used out of combat to great effect.
Mm-hmm. Acid Flask and Alchemist Fire both have really great uses both in and out of.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying, because you could set things on fire with the Alchemist Fire, or the Acid Flask can be used to like dissolve things, and they have out of combat utility, but they're not efficient as a weapon if you want to use them as a primary weapon. It's a good backup.
I'd also take Universal Solvent as a good one.
Yeah, I agree with that one. Universal Solvent is definitely one of those items that you'll when you need it, and it's epic when you need it too, because it's usually like you're stuck.
Smoke bombs and smoke sticks, that's another one.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're really good for escapes. They're good for providing you a quick... if you have no other way to shield yourself, a cloud of smoke will do... It'll give them a mischance, which can save your life, conceivably.
Personally, when I thought of this question, I mostly thought what magic items I could probably not adventure without. Mostly it's down to like Cloak of Resistance, the Cloaks of Resistance for me, and maybe a few sun rods in case we get into a cave that has methane for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
Oh gosh, what other things? Golem Bane Scarab is always a good one, just because allows you to sense the location of golems, and that's simply good knowledge to be able to use, whether in combat or not.
And personally, any ability buffing item is good in and out of combat.
Ring of Sustenance.
Oh yeah.
Never have to eat or drink.
Yep. +1 silver short sword. Just in case you come up against something where you're going to need that type of weapon, but you haven't necessarily have your primary weapon is good for fighting things which are going to need something like magic or silver.
Or the alchemical...
the alchemical silver. That's a good way to go.
Hey, if you're got high enough, got enough gold, mithril does just as well as silver.
Always carry a rope. Always carry a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, 10-foot poles are immensely useful.
Never underestimate the value of a portable ram.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, never underestimate the power of a portable ram.
Wand of Cure Light Wounds, level 1, where it's just the emergency heal stick.
Yeah, that's not bad. I don't know, there's so many magical items in Pathfinder, I can't think of all the ones that I'd want if given the chance.
For alchemic substances, I'm kind of a fan of Meditation Tea, just because it gives you a bonus on enchantment and mind affecting stuff. That's one of the... It's a little bit situational, but it's one of the ones where it's possible that if you know you're going up against something like that, it's something you might want to grab beforehand.
I know there's something else that is going to stand out as soon as I click this. So give me like a couple more seconds.
Honestly, if you're playing Gunslinger and the rest of your party is wants to focus on stealth, there's an item called Silence Gel, which makes all your shots silent for the next hour.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah, that one.
I think for a slightly dumb and cruel item, the Bottle of Shadows, which allows you to produce shadows.
And let me clarify, despite what it's called, Silence Gel is not an alchemical item. It is actually magical.
Figurines of Wondrous Power. That's
those
another
are
useful
nice
one.
insta-mounts.
Yep.
Or, meat shields if you need them.
They make good distractions, too.
Yeah.
Ah, that's what it was. The one that I
Or
almost never
guides.
have to use anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Weapon blanches. Insert topic here. Weapon blanch.
Yeah.
You put that on, and you're.
Is
you're
that like
set.
the holy weapon? Is that like the holy weapon bombs?
That's you can add ghost salt, cold iron, adamantine, or silver to any weapon.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Rusting Powder. That's another one I like.
Oh yeah, that's really good.
That one has gotten me out of a lot of trouble. And antitoxin.
It's never a bad idea to have some.
If you don't at least carry one or two on your character, when you need it, you're gonna realize why. Because every time that I've needed it, not had it, it's been bad. It's been like, that character's almost dead and in a near-dead situation. Oh yeah,
what?
and will stay there for a while.
Oh, what's good? Oh, what's a poison gonna do to me? They don't go above a DC 15. I roll a 14. Fuck.
But yeah, that was the definite one that hit me. I can't think of anything else that really stands out. I mean, there's
A cart.
a plethora of items that you can grab, but if we're just talking about alchemical and magical ones, yeah, that one's kind of one of those. Look at your DM. If you've been playing with them for a while, you kind of have an idea
Of what you
The
need.
kind of stuff they like.
Oh,
what's gonna throw at you.
the
Swarm repellent.
oh yeah, that's a good one. The the papers that can turn into things. What are they called?
Origami? Or the
One turns into an anchor. That's the one I like.
The feather
The
talismans.
feather tokens.
Yeah, the tokens.
The feather tokens are fun.
Alright, I think we're
And then there's the one that explodes into feathers. That one's fun.
I don't think
Or
that
the
was
origami
actual
chicken
token.
swarm.
Yeah.
Honestly,
There we go.
like I said, when I said this was low, it's just like we have so many options.
That's what I was trying to say. Is there's so many magical items that you could just have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, realistically, you could go down the list and go, ooh, that one would be useful in this situation.
And yeah, same goes for the alchemical items. It's just like all of these are useful in a given situation.
Yeah. So it's just kind of one of those, take your time and kind of go through them. Because a lot of them are going to be price-based. Can you get this for a spell and cost less than it would cost you to get it as an alchemical or magical item? If so, what do you need to do? And vice versa.
All right, D8, you want to handle the last question?
Sure. From gosh, I'm gonna mess this name up. Debarbarak.
That's probably what I would have gone with.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. For your Flame Oracle Kitsune build or Kitsune build, are there other races you would recommend?
Yeah, there are lots of races that would totally work just fine for that build. Ifrit, that's one.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Don't half orcs
Human.
get a weird oracle bonus?
Humans are never a bad choice.
Yeah.
The humans are never a bad choice. Anything which gets a bonus to charisma, like Dampier.
Goblins got some stupid stuff
Yep.
with fire.
Yeah,
They
do.
have like fire feats that add extra fire damage and stuff.
I think the I think the half orc only gets it if it's a sorcerer.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, those are some decent races for you to choose from. Just kind of take your time. I mean, the charisma bonus is huge with oracles, but it's not a mandatory thing. So if you see something else that you really like about a race that can make up for the -1 in charisma, I'd take it.
Yeah.
Next-
Also, there are lots of races that have the additional versions of them, like ASMR Tiefling, all of those.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Next question is, you don't have to answer this one if you have in another video, but what is your favorite class to play? And if if yourself were a character, what class would you be? I think we should take that in two separate little broken areas. So what is your favorite class to play? Starting with D6.
I have a lot of them, but I would say the ones that I tend to kind of gravitate to, and I like them for just more than what they do mechanically, is I like the Investigator. I think the Investigator is really cool.
Not my cup of tea, but yeah, it's a good class.
I like the wizard. Wizards are a lot of fun. I like the versatility, and I like a lot of the thematic stuff that you can get, like the bonded item or the familiar. And I like the spellbook. I think spellbooks are really cool. Let's see. What else do I like? I keep wanting the witch to be better, but I know it never will. So I just have kind of consigned it to the, it would be nice. Maybe one day. I like monks. Monks are really cool. I like to go with more of the Zen sort of mystical version of the monk more than the bone-breaking martial style of monk. And I would say that I like the Inquisitor, just because I like the intensity of it, and it's a good way to do a paladin without the constraints of a paladin. I like the demi-smite version of Bane.
All right, D10.
I also have a lot of classes that I enjoyed while I've been playing them. Core classes, cleric, paladin, ranger. You might sense a pattern here. Base classes, gunslinger, and magus for completely different reasons. And I also love the war priest. The Inquisitor's fun, but I haven't played him yet. And I just seem to have this gravitation towards the brawler that for some reason I don't seem to have the same interest in the monk.
I personally, my favorite role to play is DPS. And that can be filled in a bunch of different ways. The classes I like the most are Fighter. I like Fighter a lot. I like Sorcerer. I like Rogue. And I like the Blood Rager. Everything else is kind of hit or miss for me. Though I found I really, really like the Druid. I just don't normally play it.
I think for me, this one's kind of an easy one. I've kind of been just kind of dabbling around the table, different things. But the ones that like truly can constitute as my favorite are going to be the Rogue, and then if I want to go specific, different of the certain archetypes of the Rogue are just absolutely beautiful. The Oracle, because that class can do so much. There's just so much available to it that you can literally pick an Oracle like for 5 or 6 different campaigns and not play the same way other than the fact that you're a spellcaster. You could literally just have so much fun with that class. And then I think if I had to pick one more, it would probably be the Wizard, and for the simple reason of I play my Wizards utilitarian with some power. And when you go around that way, you kind of have the Wizard as the best class for that ability to just kind of go, I think I have a solution for that. And then when they get in a fight, they just unload.
I definitely lied. My favorite class is the Swashbuckler. I forgot about it.
I was about to say the Swashbuckler's great.
All right, the last part of this question is Earthbenders are from Avatar.
Well, we didn't really answer.
Oh, you're right, we didn't. All right, let's do that over. And then the second part of this, if you were yourself or a character, what class would you be? Let's start again around the table.
Well, so if I was a character... Well, first off, I'm assuming I'm not getting stuck with one of the NPC classes, like a commoner.
Or adept.
Or adept.
So
I'm a nobleman.
Toby thinks he wouldn't get stuck as a commoner.
I would hope I wouldn't get stuck as a commoner.
All right,
I probably would.
We'll give him expert. It's one step.
Thank you. You are a most merciful DM. But if I was going to say which character I think suits me best... even though it's a class that is not really my favorite, I think I'd do pretty well as a cleric. I think that I would also do pretty well as a wizard or even an investigator. I think I can get in there, get into my mind palace, focus on things, spend an obnoxiously long amount of time looking at a clue, be like, but what does it mean? What do you think, D10?
I'm having a tough time answering this, because as much as I love to play Divine Casters, I don't think I'd ever truly hold myself to one god as I do when I play. That being said, I'm not as intelligent as I'd like to be. So if I'd go on with what I like I like getting my hands dirty, I like seeing the world, I'd probably go Ranger for myself if I had to choose a player class.
I think you do good with Bard.
Gee, thanks. I don't think I nearly have the charisma.
I would do Bard or Sorcerer because I have the charisma.
Yeah, he's a narcissistic asshole.
I don't have a whole lot of the physical stats that I feel I would need, even though in this day and age it's of course different, to really constitute a rogue or a fighter, and I wouldn't consider myself wise enough to play any of the classes that need that, and even in intelligence, while I think I have a higher intelligence score than perhaps my strength score, I certainly don't have enough to really constitute a wizard. I'm much more of a sorcerer.
I think you could do a party face rogue. You know, one who's got like a lot of...
I don't have the dexterity. I have absolutely no hand-eye coordination.
Yeah, well, that is important.
I have to think about this logically.
Yeah, see, that's kind of how I went with it.
Because if I think about this, like what character I would be, I could go with different times in my life I was a different character class. So I was a rogue up until a certain point. I then became a bard. I then became a cleric. I renounced that faith and then became a barbarian. You know, if I go through my life, it's like, wow, alright, cool, that's interesting. But if I go by, like, what character class I would, like, most represents me, and I go into Pathfinder, unfortunately, a class I have yet to play represents me the best, and that was Gunslinger. And it's odd, entertaining, and funny that it does, but it fits. I literally have the capabilities of some of the professionals with a gun, have the abilities to just think my solution through and then use a weapon in ways that are, and use my intelligence enough to use a weapon in ways that are not normally needed or done. Shooting, bouncing shots off walls, you know, just using improvised weapon, or not improvised, but using weapons that literally look like they were done in and turning them into something useful.
Yeah, no. Yeah, despite all that, the Gunslinger is a wisdom-based class.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I could see it for you. I definitely could.
Alright, the last question for this Q&A is from Dipper Bark. The last question is, Earthbenders from Avatar, what would be an effective way to build that in Pathfinder? Places you would start looking at among other things? The short answer is you're not going to find a good way to build it in Pathfinder. There are a couple ways that you can get sort of close, but for the most part, there's not enough
rock-based spells.
Rock-based things that you can do at lower levels.
And unfortunately, other earth-based spells go into acid.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of sustain with it. Some of the spells that you can look at that would get you where you want to go are like Stone Discus can kind of get you, Magic Stone can get you there. Yeah. But none of the like full-on rock javelins or things. You can do Create Pit or Stone Shape could equally do so, and Hungry Earth. But honestly, there's not a whole lot of sustain that you can have.
I think your best bet would be to do it more as an RP thing than an actual mechanical thing, like playing a druid who's got a really strong connection to the earth. I think there's the Iron Mountain Monk who's like all about not being movable, and that's kind of part of the fighting style.
Honestly, the easiest way to do this one is honestly quite simple for you. You can do it in one way. You literally have to be in constant communication with your DM and literally change the flavor of your spells that you're using to have it more earth-based. So if you're using Magic Missile, maybe you're shooting stones instead of little orbs of light. If you're using Shield, you know, maybe you literally stomp your foot in the ground and a rock shield is floating right next to you. You know, if you think outside the box and your DM approves, you can literally make this work for you with just about any of the spellcaster classes. However, you have to be in constant communication with your DM. You know, if your DM doesn't like where you're headed or doesn't like the idea, you're not going to get it to work no matter what. You know, even with the class on your side, because there's just not enough actual spells to do it. But if you flavor it and use your imagination and you and your DM talk, you can do it, and it'll be wonderful. You know.
Yeah, I also think there's one of the elemental school wizards where you're like the earth-based one, but I think it does acid stuff, and you would just flavor that differently. If the DM's willing to be creative, you could change the acid descriptor for the spell to say it does bludgeoning damage instead.
Yeah, that's one way to do it. I played with in Giant Slayer. I played with a guy who did a dwarf druid in dwarven stone plate, and used Stone Discus, Magic Stone, and Stone Shape, and those spells. And we came up...
Stone Fist.
Stone Fist is not worth it, really.
Really?
Not if you're going to use any kind of weapon. And what we did is we made a magic item that was both weapon and shield that were basically made of stone, that he could shift from a hammer and a shield to a big hammer to... And then I had it so that he moved different pluses from the shield to the hammer, but he always had like a set like +2, but you could split it up or keep it up. And that way we kind of made a stone, an earthbender, but you really do have to build something to make it work.
And, you know, even in that case, it was literally communication with the DM made that possible. Because without it, there's almost a guarantee that the DM would have been looking at that like, whoa, what are you trying to do? You know, what's going on here? Oh, okay, I think I see what you're trying to do. Now, do I want to allow that? Versus if you're talking to the DM from the get-go, it's going to be, yeah, we got this. We got your character exactly how you wanted, at least in this aspect.
Yeah.
So you have to also ask yourself, ranged or melee? As an earthbender, you technically are doing both naturally.
Which is also kind of a hard thing to do in D&D.
Yeah. Period.
That's why you do the druid.
Yeah.
You can take, especially because the druid can turn into earth elementals at one point.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So.
But I mean, if you really want the bending class, which is best in Pathfinder, it's Firebender, where you have pretty much everything you want right from the get-go.
Pretty much.
Yeah, just without all the flippy shit.
Yeah. Well, acrobatics.
Yeah. High dexterity oracle.
Yep.
Mm.
Or wizard, or...
Yeah, I was about to say pain.
All right, thank you for watching D6Damage Q&A. It's been a pleasure to answer your guys' questions. You've thrown a lot of cool curveballs at us, given us a lot to talk about. Thanks so much for watching. I'm D6.
I'm D10.
I'm D8.
I think I'm D12 still.
Maybe. We'll look.
Have a good one, guys.
And if you're interested in more Pathfinder character builds and class analysis, check us out right here on YouTube.